Chapter 354. Zhuo Jingxi did not expect that her invitation would have such a huge impact on Chen Guang. Seeing that he was deep in thought, she did not say anything to interrupt him. On the other side, Zhou Long had finally decided on what car he wanted to buy. In fact, choosing a car was just a pretense to kidnap Zhuo Jingxi. He had already decided on the car he wanted. It was a Mercedes-Benz E200L sports model that cost about 400,000 yuan. But because of the existence of Chen Guang, he changed his mind at the last minute. If he wanted to play, he would play big. So even if it would put a strain on his finances in the short term, he still gritted his teeth and decided to force his way into the E400L sports luxury model that cost 700,000 yuan. After finally making this decision, the salesgirl was also overjoyed. Her face was filled with a smile that could not be wiped away. On the other side, Zhou Long and Zhuo Jingxi's parents also walked over to where Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi were sitting with smiles on their faces. It was time to reveal his trump card and let that poor boy know how powerful he was. I can give Zhuo Jingxi a car worth 700,000 yuan. What can you give her? Zhou Long thought so. Zhuo Jingxi's parents looked at Zhuo Jingxi, who was sitting with Chen Guang, with some heartache. Daughter, look at how good this man is to you. Where in this world can you find a man who is willing to give you a luxury car without getting married? These two men, one is already successful and mature, while the other is still young and frivolous. Can't you see the difference between them? Seeing that the three of them had returned, Zhuo Jingxi looked away from Chen Guang, who was in a daze. Perhaps she knew that her previous behavior was a little too much, so she restrained herself. In fact, as long as Zhou Long did not poke at her, she was not a domineering person. Have you chosen a car? What model? Zhuo Jingxi originally did not care, but out of politeness, she reluctantly asked. Before Zhuo Long could answer, Zhuo Jingxi's mother had already approached them cheerfully. She pulled Zhuo Jingxi towards the E400L display stand. Little C, don't ask. Just come and take a look. Zhuo Jingxi's expression froze. She wanted to struggle free, but in the end, she resisted and stood up. Chen Guang, who was deep in thought, was completely unaware of this. He was unable to extricate himself from his illusory sea of dreams. In the eyes of Zhou Long and the others, his behavior made him look like a troublemaker. He finally knew that the moment they decided on the model of the car, he would lose face, so he simply played dumb. I thought you were really shameless, but it seems like you still know how to be embarrassed. Mother Zhuo secretly rolled her eyes at Chen Guang and pushed Zhuo Jingxi away arrogantly. Chen Guang didn't know how long he had been in a daze. What snapped him out of it was the sound of an argument coming from afar. He turned his head and saw Zhuo Jingxi arguing with her parents and Zhou Long, her face red. I was just absent-minded for a moment, and you guys are quarreling again. It really saves me some trouble. He stood up and followed. It seemed that he still had to go out and save the emperor himself. This is Zhou Long's car. I'm not the one who bought the car. I have nothing to do with Zhou Long. Why is this car under my name? I don't want that. Zhuo Jingxi shouted agitatedly and waved her arms. Her voice was so loud that many people in the shop looked over curiously. Mother Zhuo didn't expect her to be so resistant. With such a big commotion, she felt that it was a little embarrassing to be looked at by others. Xiaoxi, lower your voice. There are so many people watching. Your marriage with Zhou Long has already been decided. This car is also a token of Zhou Long's sincerity. Anyway, after you get married, you and your husband should live happily. What's yours is his, and what's his is yours, right? Don't be like this. Father Zhuo also coughed lightly. Xiaoxi, your mother is right. Zhou Long really likes you. Don't make things difficult for your mother and I. Zhou Long was also a little embarrassed at the side, but seeing that Father Zhuo and Mother Zhuo were on his side, he regained his courage and hurriedly said, Jingxi, don't misunderstand. I really don't mean anything else. I just saw that it was too tiring for you to drive to work all day, so I bought a car for you. It's not just a car, I even prepared a house. It's in the city, a huge house that's worth more than 2 million. Don't you remember what you said to me when we were young? You said that you would marry me when you grew up. That's right. Xiaoxi, don't be stubborn. Really, you don't know how long your father and I have waited for this day. You're our only daughter. And we don't want to die without a grandson to hug us. Mother Zhua's eyes were filled with tears as she pressed forward step by step. Zhou Long has already done so much for you. He even prepared a house and a car. What are you still hesitating for? Even if you don't think for yourself, you should at least think for your father and me. The commotion here gradually attracted more and more people over. The people around them were all whispering. Most of them felt that Zhuo Jingxi was such a pretentious person. The man had done so much for her, and her parents were about to cry. But she actually didn't know what was good for her at all. She was really too much. The voices of the crowd grew louder and louder. Zhou Long and Father Zhua and Mother Zhua's coercion also became more and more intense. Zhuo Jingxi retreated step by step, her face turning pale. You guys planned this long ago, didn't you? Today, he asked me to help look after the car. Did he think that I would happily accept his car like those women? Then give up my dream and marry him, a man I don't like? Yes. I did say something like that when I was young. But how old was I back then? Does it count? And Dad, Mom, I know you guys like him. But the person he wants to marry is me. Not the two of you. Why do you have to force me like this? From the day I entered university, you guys kept telling me that Zhou Long wants to marry you, that Zhou Long is your fiancé, and that you are Zhou Long's fiancé. But have you guys respected my choice even once? Have you guys cared about my feelings? Just because he likes me, I have to marry him? Then there are so many people who have liked me since I was young. Do I have to marry every single one of them? I'm a person, not a commodity. I've listened to your arrangements since I was young, even my marriage. I've never agreed to it. But you keep saying that I've already become his fiancé, and now you want me to accept his car here. I really can't do it. Zhuo Jingxi's face turned paler and paler. Not even a trace of blood could be seen. What right do you have to kidnap me, my future, my happiness? No. Answer. Yes. Zhuo Jingxi waved her arms crazily. Her parents' coercion, Zhou Long's disdainful liking for her under his gentle facade, and the strange gazes of the bystanders all turned into sharp knives that stabbed into her heart. I've already worked so hard. Why do I have to face this kind of fate and live in this kind of family? I can't accept this. Father Zhua, Mother Zhua, and Zhou Long were all frightened by her almost crazed state. She was indeed very gentle, submissive, and always patient. But today, she finally broke down, like a spring that had been crushed. Her body became weaker and weaker, and she was about to collapse. Just then, a pair of strong arms wrapped around her shoulders from behind. Little Cece, that's enough. I'm here. Chen Guang smiled and switched to holding Zhuo Jingxi's waist with one hand, holding her tightly. I was distracted just now. I didn't expect to wake up like this. It's my fault. Although I still haven't figured it out. Thank you for letting me think about this problem that I should have kept in my heart for the first time. I'll put it aside for now. The most important thing is to do what's in front of me. Don't cry. Leave the rest to me. Chapter 355. If Chen Guang's earlier embrace of Zhuo Jingxi's waist could be explained as a joke, now that he suddenly stood up and hugged her again in front of so many people, it could no longer be explained away as a joke. In that instant, even the onlookers felt that something was wrong. Thinking of the girl's previous resistance and the sudden appearance of the young boy, the onlookers who had been influenced by modern television dramas needed no explanation. As expected, the girl's family must have liked the handsome man in the suit, but the girl herself only liked the young man, who looked rather immature and more like a student. That was why she resisted the pressure and refused to accept the car. And even more so refused to accept the house. Some people thought that Zhuo Jingxi was stupid, while others thought that Zhuo Jingxi's pursuit of true love was very touching. Chen, what do you mean? In front of so many people, his fiancée had been hugged by Chen Guang in public. This was 10,000 times more damage than the previous bickering. Zhuo Long's face turned green and white. He could not take it anymore. Zhuo Jingxi's mother also came over like a madman and raised her hand to hit Chen Guang. She cursed, "Chen Guang, let go." In the end, her hand did not go down because Zhuo Jingxi grabbed her hand instead. "Mom, don't do this." Chen Guang turned to look at Zhuo Jingxi's mother. He did not loosen his grip on Zhuo Jingxi at all. Instead, he quietly moved so that he was between Zhuo Jingxi and Zhuo Jingxi's mother. I respect you as an elder, so I call you Auntie. No matter how Zhuolong clamors, I'll just ignore it for now. But Auntie, you can't treat me like this. Even if Jingxi and I are not even close, you can't treat me like this. Without waiting for Zhuo Jingxi's mother to speak again, Chen Guang waved his empty hand and pointed at Zhuolong, who was about to forcibly separate him and Zhuo Jingxi. He said coldly, I know what you're proud of and what you're relying on. It's just that you think you're rich and amazing, and I'm poor and don't have the right to compete with you. Seeing that Chen Guang was becoming more and more arrogant, the surrounding people's discussions became more and more intense. Gradually, the situation changed. At first, these people thought that Zhuo Jingxi didn't know what was good for her, but now, they were accusing the two elders of coveting Zhuolong's money and trying to sell their daughter. Father Zhuo could no longer sit still. Chen Guang, don't spout nonsense. Xiao Zhou and Xiao Si have known each other since they were young. They can be considered childhood sweethearts. We also know Xiao Zhou very well. What's wrong with us matchmaking them? Do you really know everything? Chen Guang smiled. I have a friend who is also in the entertainment industry. Mr. Zhou, you have a lot of interesting stories, so I don't want to talk about them here. But everyone knows it, right? Of course, he was just spouting nonsense. But Zhou Long's entire body trembled as he looked at Chen Guang in fear. What the hell? How the F***ck could he hit the mark by a fluke? Also, what do you mean by instantly turning into a coward? Your mental fortitude is a little too lacking. Don't talk nonsense. You're deliberately slandering us. Besides, since we're in the entertainment industry, there are times when we can't help ourselves. As elders, we all understand this. This is the career of young people. Mother Zhuo, on the other hand, jumped out to help Zhou Long. Chen Guang grinned. Auntie, can I take it that what you're trying to say is that as long as it's for his career, it's okay even if your son-in-law has a life of debauchery outside? As long as the red flag doesn't fall at home, the colored flag flutters outside? Don't pester endlessly. These are two different concepts. This isn't debauchery, it's for work. This is a social event. As long as Xiao Zhou is sincere about Xiao Si, of course we have to understand. As a man, career is the most important. The less capable a man is, the more honest he is. You're a poor web novelist. You don't know what a career is. I will never agree to let Xiao Si suffer with you. I won't agree no matter what. As Mother Zhuo spoke, her plump body suddenly became extremely nimble. She dashed to the side and tried to grab Zhuo Jingxi's hand. Chen Guang quickly stopped her. Auntie, I understand what you mean. It's still the same thing. Your criteria for choosing a son-in-law is to have money, right? If you must understand it that way, then I won't deny it. At least for you that's the logic. Because you're poor you can't do anything. Mother Zhuo gritted her teeth and said fiercely. She was already extremely annoyed. Alright, I'm really sorry. I'm really rich, richer than you can imagine. I'm probably richer than this piano player. Nonsense. You're just a lousy web novelist. Zhou Long's face was full of mockery. Are you crazy? I'm a novelist, that's right. I'm so lousy that I don't even have the courage to write. But before that, I'm sorry, I'm more like a person. Oh, a rich person. Writing web novels is just something I've always wanted to do, but never had the time to do it. Chen Guang grinned and took out a bank card. Without another word, he suddenly turned around and hugged Zhuo Jingxi as he walked towards one of the male salesmen. He pointed at the E400 and said loudly, I'll buy this car now in full. Immediately. Looking at the black bank card in Chen Guang's hand, the salesman did not recognize what kind of card it was, but he felt that what Chen Guang said was probably true. He hurriedly went to call the manager. He could not handle this matter. Zhuo Jingxi did not say a word from beginning to end. She only clung tightly to Chen Guang. She was really on the verge of a breakdown just now. No, it should be more accurate to say that she had already broken down. But after Chen Guang appeared, her wavering heart seemed to have found a pillar of support. She never thought that a student could give her such a feeling. It was as if he could single-handedly free her from the fate that had been suppressed for 10 years. His body seemed to be emitting light, the only ray of light in the darkness. She knew that no matter how hard she tried, if she did not change something, sooner or later, she would not be able to resist the constant pressure from her parents, let alone Zhuolong's aggressiveness. She trembled with fear at the thought of marrying a man she didn't like at all, and becoming a canary in a cage from then on. But now Chen Guang appeared. Just as Zhuolong was about to lay his cards on the table, maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was fate. But no matter what, he finally came. She even felt that it was absurd. As a teacher, how could she be so weak in front of her student? But she could not say a word. She could only stare at Chen Guang in a daze. Her gaze could not be said to be full of love, but it was very easy to misunderstand. Looking at this scene, and seeing that the 4S store manager actually went to do the paperwork, Zhuolong's eyes were about to spit fire. "You're pretending. You're pretending. I don't believe it." Chen Guang suddenly grinned. "Maybe you don't know much. Then let me tell you something. This card is called the UBS Black Card. This morning, I just used this card to transfer 10 million to someone. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Aren't you rich? Later, I'll show you what a rich person is." The people who had been watching from the side were all dumbfounded. Another twist in the road? This shabbily dressed kid was the real invisible rich man? Maybe it was because Chen Guang said that he would buy the car immediately. These 4 words made the people in the store nervous. His efficiency was so high that it made people's hair stand on end. In less than 2 minutes, the manager had already come over to ask Chen Guang to swipe the card. Chen Guang raised his eyebrows. "Didn't you think I was bragging? Come, follow me to take a look." Chapter 356. From the moment Chen Guang took out the black card until the manager came back and told him to swipe the card, father and mother Zhua were completely bewildered. Of course, like Zhuolong, they didn't believe it at all. But Chen Guang was too confident, and they couldn't bring themselves to doubt him. The manager of the 4S shop was more knowledgeable than them. The last time he had seen a card like this was 2 years ago. At that time, he was still a newbie salesman who had just arrived, and he had seen what it meant to be a real tycoon. The person holding the card entered the shop and swiped the card to pay for the Mercedes-Benz SL Class AMG, worth more than 2 million, in less than half an hour. Later on, he had seen many rich people, including the American Express centurion who owned the card. But he still recognized it at a glance. That was why he had purposely instructed the finance department to speed up the process as fast as possible. Now that the tycoon had gotten to his head, he had to quickly pay the money before he changed his mind. No matter how the family drama was going to play out, they had to sell the car first before anything else. The manager led the way, and Chen Guang walked in front with Shu Jingxi in his arms, valiant and high-spirited. Behind them were father and mother Zhua and Zhuolong. By this time, everyone had a hunch. Zhuolong still didn't believe it. He wanted to pull out a knife and cut off Chen Guang's arm that was holding Shu Jingxi, but he didn't dare. Father and mother Zhua had already gone from complete disbelief to skepticism, especially when they saw the attitude of the 4S shop manager become especially polite. They were even more convinced. The others who wanted to watch the show were even further behind. Some were envious of Shu Jingxi, while others thought it was a joke. But in this day and age, people laughed at the poor, not the prostitutes. Many girls, even beautiful saleswomen, felt that no matter what Zhuolong did, as long as a man was willing to give them an E320 worth 6 or 700,000, they would give their bodies to him. They could give up their status, but they could not live without a car. As for this young man, if what he said was true, it would be reasonable for him to turn around and kick Zhuolong away. Of course, this was also determined by one's realm. Shu Jingxi had a dream in her heart, and her dream was more valuable than money. She wanted freedom, she wanted to achieve her dream, and she wanted to become a top-notch researcher. For this, not to mention Zhuolong's wealth, even if Chen Guang gave her so much money, she wouldn't agree to it. In other words, if the same thing happened to Lu Fei, it would be even more fun. This old lady lacks everything except money. Get as far away from me as you can. Are you really going to buy this car? Do you like this car? Shu Jingxi could finally speak. Her mind gradually became sober. Being hugged by Chen Guang, she felt a little awkward. especially when she felt that her plump body was rubbing against this guy's body. When she thought of her parents behind her face turned red. She twisted her body slightly, trying to break free a little, but Chen Guang grinned and whispered in her ear, "Teacher Zhua, I'm helping you solve this problem. If you want to solve it once and for all, cooperate with me. This car, I don't want it. I don't want to buy such a cheap thing. But in this situation, it's not a big deal to buy one. Your hand is on my butt. Move away." Zhuo Jingxi's face turned red. She stared at him and said, "Behind there are a lot of people watching." Chen Guang smiled. "Actually, I don't want to. But if I don't do this, how can I make Zhou Long and your parents completely give up? I'm really doing this for your own good." "Is that so? Oh then okay." Zhuo Jingxi didn't know what she had done. She was clearly against Zhou Long, but at this time, what Chen Guang wanted to do seemed to be no different from Zhou Long. In fact, it was even more overbearing, unreasonable, and perverted. However, she couldn't bring herself to reject it in her heart. In her daze, she felt as if she had returned to the conference room in the academy. It was as if she could see Chen Guang standing up for her and rebuking Wang Runshi with righteous words. In her mind, she thought of the fatal black GTR she saw on the live broadcast. That car, that person, that mountain, that road that day. He used godlike skills and courage, with a shocking leap into the sky, with unparalleled overbearingness, to make everyone bow in front of him. This student is not the same. "Teacher Zhua, you usually sit for too long, right? What's wrong? Your butt is a little bigger than the average person. Usually I can't see it, but when I pinch it I can see it." "You don't say anymore." Zhou Long finally broke down. He took a step forward and pushed Chen Guang. "Bastard." However, Chen Guang was already prepared for this. He turned around with Zhuo Jingxi in his arms. Although the hand that was holding onto Zhuo Jingxi did not move, his other hand swiftly grabbed onto Zhou Long's hand and pinched onto Zhou Long's finger. Zhou Long grunted, then felt a sharp pain in his fingers. He looked at Chen Guang in a panic. You really dare to hit me?" "Nonsense. When did I act like someone who only moves his mouth and doesn't use his hands? Don't you play the piano? What's so great about it? Tell me, if I crush your fingers now, will you still be able to play the piano in the future? It's the real kind of crushing." Chen Guang was expressionless. "You made the first move. I was just defending myself." As he spoke, the strength in his fingers increased. He really did intend to do that. When Zhuo Jingxi saw this scene, she panicked and immediately shook Chen Guang's arm. "Let go! Let go!" Chen Guang let go and Zhou Long fell to the ground. He looked at Zhuo Jingxi. "You still care about me after all?" Chen Guang moved closer and continued to hold Zhuo Jingxi's waist. "What do you think? She clearly doesn't want me to cause trouble. Who do you think you are? Right?" With that, Chen Guang ignored Zhou Long and quickly caught up with the manager with Zhuo Jingxi, ready to swipe his card. "Teacher Zhua, come and sign." Standing by the cashier, Chen Guang whispered into Zhuo Jingxi's ear. Zhuo Jingxi's face paled, and she shook her head. "No, I didn't agree to Zhou Long's car. That's why I made a fuss." "Teacher Zhua, you don't understand. You didn't agree to Zhou Long, but you agreed to me. What does that mean? You can make that piano player give up and stop your parents from pressuring you. In the future, you can just push everything to me. The wind is big and the waves are big. I'll take care of it for you. Isn't that good? But you can't give me a car. I'm in no position to accept it. I'm not really giving it to you. I'm just going through the motions in front of them. We can talk about it later in private. You can just quietly transfer the car to me. You know how much money I have in my pocket right now. This bit of money is really nothing. A teacher for a day is a teacher for life. Teacher Zhuo, we still have a long way to go, right?" "No. Still no." Zhuo Jingxi insisted. Chen Guang curled his lips. "Then there's no other way. I was going to give it to you. That's the only way to make that Zhou Long lose all hope. Now I can only use another method. What are you going to do?" Chapter 357. Chen Guang had already turned to ask the manager next to him. "May I ask if you have a second hammer here? The kind that's especially big and heavy. The kind that can smash a car's roof with one hammer." The manager looked confused. "Yes, sir, what's wrong?" Chen Guang grinned. "Bring me one." "What are you doing?" Zhuo Jingxi turned his face around. Chen Guang chuckled. To make the Guqin player feel despair. To make him not dare to compete with me. I have to use a more interesting method to make him understand that this bit of money is nothing to me. You're right, I want to smash the car. You're crazy. Not crazy, very clear-headed. It's just a few 100,000 anyway. In a few days I'll need more. In the end, Chen Guang didn't finish his sentence. Yes, with Liuli's personality, the money in his pocket really wouldn't last long. So he didn't say it out loud to make people worry for no reason. All right. I want it. I want it, all right. Zhuo Jingxi was frightened by Chen Guang's calm tone. After swiping the card, paying, signing, and taking the car keys, the 4S store employee went to run the procedure. The E400L Sports Luxury model, which was worth a total of 700,000, went to Zhuo Jingxi. Up until now, it had only taken a total of 15 minutes. The onlookers had already dispersed. Everyone knew that the man in the suit had lost. In terms of money, he had lost. In terms of status in the girl's heart, he had lost completely. Guqin player, what do you have to say now? Anyway, there's still an hour before the person handling the paperwork comes back. Why don't I have a good talk with you here? You're not as rich as me, not as handsome, and Xiao Sisi doesn't like you at all. How can you be so thick-skinned? If I were you, I'd find a piece of tofu and kill myself right now. Chen Guang turned back to look coldly at Zhou Long father, and Mother Zhuo were already speechless. Today's situation was far beyond their expectations. They were also complaining about Zhuo Jingxi in their hearts. You should have told us earlier that you already have such a great friend. Why did we have to push you onto Zhou Long? Your boyfriend is really something. He's obviously a millionaire. Yet he says he's a web novelist. He must have been planning to show off his wealth to make Zhou Long despair, right? Zhou Long looked up at Zhuo Jingxi, who was still hugging Chen Guang. His heart was filled with despair and coldness. His neatly combed hair was now a mess. Every word that Chen Guang said was trampling on his dignity, just like how he had used his identity countless times in the past to flaunt and pressure Zhuo Jingxi's parents. I can play the piano better than you. He didn't know why he said that, but it was the only thing he could think of that he was better than Chen Guang. Chen Guang's face stiffened. Did he really get it right? What's the use of playing the piano? I'm better at writing novels than you. Chen Guang rolled his eyes. He pulled Zhuo Jingxi to sit on the sofa and said a lot. Drink some water first. Humph. You salespeople didn't even give me water just now. You didn't even care about me. I won't drink it even if you give it to me now. I'll bring it myself. He opened his bag, took out a cup, and drank some water. Biayu, he had entered the cup world. Just like that. Without any warning. By the time Chen Guang came back to his senses, he was already standing in front of a computer. Liuli was sitting on an esports chair in a cloud bikini, typing away at the keyboard. Her eyes were glued to the screen. As if she had already sensed his arrival, she didn't even look up. She pouted and said, "You're here. Take a seat. You'll be entering in a moment." Chen Guang was dumbfounded. This receptionist's attitude was worse than a salesperson at a 4S store. Why the hell was she so focused on typing away at the computer? He had never seen her so serious. He finally saw it today. But why did it feel so scary? A sense of impending disaster descended from the sky. Chen Guang felt like dark clouds were covering his head. Hey, what's this? What's going on? Why don't you explain to me what the hell is today's world in a cup? Chen Guang sat down beside her and protested decisively. Liuli was still typing away. Her typing speed was already at the level of a veteran netizen. No time. Busy. Go figure it out yourself. No one will die anyway. Forget it. I'll tell you a piece of good news. Because of Otto's statue, divine power has been quite abundant recently. There's enough energy in the heavenly Holy Grail. This time, I'll give you a better cup world. Is that so? No one will die. It's better. I feel at ease when I hear these two words. Thanks. Chen Guang chuckled. The cup world is this emperor's duty. You don't have to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank me for this. What? Are you blind? Don't you know how to read it yourself? Chen Guang grumbled in his heart. If you don't agree to let me read it, won't I be beaten half to death like last time? What is this thing? She seems to be very pleased with herself. Does it have something to do with that financial management thing? Could it be that she has really become a legendary financial management expert after pondering for so many days? He stared at it. Analysis of the classic business TV drama plot. The storm of Zhongguang and oh my god, can someone stop her? After all this time, she still had the same train of thought. She learned business from TV dramas. Now, she's actually manually arranging the TV drama's plot. Is that what she's writing about? Crazy. Chen Guang was just about to jump up and smash her computer. His head twitched, and he was sucked in again. Give me a little time. 5 seconds is fine. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly discovered that he was sitting on a chair. Looking around, he discovered that there were many people staring at him from all directions. White, black, male, female, old, young. There's someone here? This time, there's someone in the cup world. Oh my god. I've finally seen a living person. It's really a great cup world. Tears streamed down his face. How long has it been since the last time he saw a living person in the cup world? Well, in fact, it's only been 1 or 2 months in the outside world. But in the heavenly Holy Grail, it's already a long time ago. Happy. Then what is the test of the cup world this time? Chen Guang got up, planning to greet the people around him and ask for information. According to the style of online games, he should be in the novice village right now, right? Unexpectedly, as soon as he got up, he saw the people who were looking at him calmly suddenly become extremely angry. They roared wildly, throwing the wine glasses, bread, steaks, plates, and forks in their hands at him like a swarm of bees. For a moment, Chen Guang was caught off guard. What the hell? Can we communicate properly? Accompanied by the angry roars of the crowd, the sound of things hitting the ground, or something else came one after another. The overwhelming amount of things became more and more violent, and Chen Guang was unknowingly pushed back onto the chair. Just as his butt was pushed back, the angry crowd suddenly returned to their previous state. They were still looking at him with expectant eyes. The countless things that were flying in the air just now disappeared into thin air, as if nothing had happened. Chen Guang's face darkened. After all this time, these people were not living people, but NPCs in games that only knew one trick. What the hell is this cup world? Then he carefully looked around. The familiar dim yellow light, the towering wooden pillars everywhere, the people sitting together, the strange looks in their eyes, and the familiar patterns on the lobby floor. Finally, his vision returned to the piano in front of him. This scene, this crowd, this style, and that black man who was surrounded by people. Finally, Chen Guang recalled a movie that he had watched in the past, Ocean Pianist. Am I 1900 sitting in front of the piano? Chapter 358. I got it. Before I came in, I was ridiculing Zhou Long for being able to play the piano. But I ended up entering the world of cups. Seriously, how could I accept this? If you want to kill me, just give me your green dragon crescent blade. However, there was something that Chen Guang couldn't figure out. Although he said that playing the piano was worthless, he knew that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. It wasn't as simple as moving your fingers and randomly pressing on the piano. Even if you could play the piano, you were still miles away from it. Other than that, there were millions of people who could play the piano. To people who didn't understand music, it was the same thing. But why were some people called pianists, while others could only squat in middle school to teach students? The most important difference was in one word: musical literacy. When one's musical literacy reached a certain level, playing the same score would sound like it was on a completely different level to people who understood music. Other than that, being able to play someone else's score to compose one's own was another level of difference. So in history, there were Beethoven, Mozart, and Tchaikovsky who were engraved on monuments. Even after hundreds of years, they were still looked up to by countless people. Music that could truly be remembered in history was able to strike the deepest parts of one's heart. It was the sound that came from the depths of a pianist's soul. To produce this kind of sound, it required incomparable spirituality, extraordinary talent, unparalleled understanding and talent of music, and enough perseverance. Only then could one become a true master. At least in Chen Guang's understanding, Although the world of cups at the spirit sky level was powerful, his previous training was mostly focused on improving his body's instinctive reactions. English was thrown into the environment of the Sea of Moments, forcing him to live with pirates who spoke with a medieval accent. He had to learn it. To play Dota, he had to train his body and brain to form an intuition-like instinct for the game through days and days of boring training. Perhaps the changes in the game version would cause his level to fluctuate, but as long as he got used to the version, he would be able to make the right decision at the right time and react the fastest without thinking. There was no need to talk about the racing god training ground, pencil sharpening, and Qilin arms. But if he was good at playing the piano, he would be a musician, a master. The difficulty level should be the same as that of a businessman. There was no reason for him to appear now. Chen Guang pondered while looking at the music scores on the piano stand in front of him. His heart was at a loss. At least 10 minutes had passed, but the people around him did not move at all. They were still looking at him expectantly and whispering to each other from time to time. The blonde waitress, who was dressed in revealing clothes and had a white patch on her chest, was carrying a tray and walking through the crowd. From time to time, she would pat people's buttocks and tease them for a while. Then, she would put the wine glasses on the tray on the guest's table and bend down to let people stuff the coins into her breasts. After a brief moment, Chen Guang noticed that the waitress had returned. Her steps were the same as before, and there wasn't any difference in her expression. It was so much so that there wasn't any change in her dress when she was patted. As expected, it was still a shoddy production. Even though it looked so real, it was a completely different concept from Captain Annie and Old Jack on the Inn Royal. This was basically a holographic projection that was being played on repeat. But it really hurt when the things that these bastards threw at him hit his head. Without Lioli's guidance or the electronic voice of the heavenly Holy Grail, Chen Guang knew that Lioli's attitude earlier was not fake. She really planned to let him go. Fine, let's just do it. Anyway, the piano was here, and so was the music score. After thinking about it, he just had to play according to the music score. After squinting at the music score in front of him for half an hour, Chen Guang could not even move his fingers. He could not understand it at all. Ever since he was young, he had never even looked at the music score of a nursery rhyme, let alone the piano. What the hell was there to learn? At least give him some instructions. Even a beginner's textbook would be good. With an incomparable pain in the ass, he pressed both his hands hard on the piano. The sound of 10 fingers hitting the keys at the same time suddenly broke the silence under the hustle and bustle of the Virginian. The next moment, the crowd was furious again. One after another, inexplicable things flew into the sky and landed on Chen Guang's face, body, and head. After a long time, they finally stopped. Pulling off half a piece of buttered bread and butter from his face, Chen Guang's face was filled with vicissitudes of life. He understood now. These animals who were watching for fun were equivalent to sound test machines. If he left the bench or played the wrong thing, they would go crazy. After calming down a little, Chen Guang extended his left index finger and casually pressed a key. Ding! Then he was greeted by another storm. People said that a true gentleman should not speak when watching a chess game. These onlookers on the Virginian were definitely the audience who were the furthest away from a true gentleman in this world. There was no audience master worse than them. After trying 66 of the 88 keys, Chen Guang was finally happy to find that these people did not go crazy at the first moment. Well, it was undeniable that they were the most accurate instruments and would not miss a single wrong sound. But if he hesitated a little, he would end up with chicken soup all over his head, because he had not pressed the second key for a long time. Chen Guang stared at the score and understood. This note referred to this key. He firmly memorized it and memorized it without explanation. It was not important whether he understood it or not. It was fine as long as he could draw the same sound. Just like that, Chen Guang did not know how many things were thrown on him. Finally, he stumbled through the entire song. Thanks to the cleaning and restoration function of the world in the cup, he felt that he would be buried in steak, bread, cups, and plates. By the way, the cleaning function of the world in the cup did not let go of his body. It was absolutely instantaneous and clean, leaving no residue and no stains. But he thought that he was free, and then he immediately realized that he was wrong. The crowd still went crazy again, being slapped in the face by a large piece of medium-rare steak, and feeling the taste of blood and gravy. Chen Guangming instantly understood. The sound of the flick was so unpleasant that he couldn't bear it either. The anger of these NPCs was only natural. He did not know how much time had passed, and he did not know how many times he had released the last key. Then he waited for the storm to come again. But after a long time, there was no movement. He looked around and suddenly felt tears streaming down his face. The people around him were finally no longer angry. Instead, they looked at him with surprise and disbelief. In these people's eyes, there was worship and hatred. The eyes of the black jazz master were filled with unwillingness and contempt. It was done. Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. Damn, he finally got through this song by rote. If he remembered correctly, when 1900 in the movie Pianist on the Sea played the first song in front of everyone, the ordinary people showed this expression. As his memory flowed, he compared the scene in front of him with the scene in the movie. This person and the picture actually overlapped. That's right, the song I just played is also at the level of the performance of 1900 in the movie. It was not easy. A person who did not understand music and had never played any musical instrument before could actually do this. Not to mention other things. At least this song had become as good as 1900. He did not need any musical talent. He only needed to memorize the corresponding keys of each note, and then let his hands grasp each subtle rhythm with the same mechanical precision. Completely copied. 1900 possessed. Chapter 359. Just as Chen Guang was showing off, the jazz master finally came up. Chen Guang knew that according to the movie's plot, it was time for him to play a song. He got up and gave way. Too lazy to listen to what this guy was playing, Chen Guang rushed out of the bar and ran to the deck of the Virginian. Long time no see. See, you're all water. Sure enough, you can't count on too much. After leaving the bar, everything became mosaic. The mosaic deck, the mosaic chimney of the cruise ship, the mosaic sea, and the mosaic of himself. The square sun in the distant sky that was about to set the sea level filled Chen Guang's heart with a touch of sadness. I thought you would give me a sea of moments, but it turned out to be a mosaic. I didn't know how to cherish it until I lost it. How I missed the little things in the sea of moments. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, a large group of people rushed out of the bar. Chen Guang watched as these vivid people rushed out of the bar and turned into mosaic people. Their hands reached out first, and then their hands turned into mosaic. When their heads popped out, their faces turned into mosaic first, but the back of their heads was still a real person. With the door as the boundary, it was like there was an invisible barrier. When people passed through this barrier, their body parts turned into mosaic as if they were scanned. Watching people turn into mosaic, Chen Guang's hair stood on end, but the people who rushed out didn't feel it at all. Then, before he came back to his senses, he was restrained by 7 or 8 mosaic people. He wanted to resist, but as soon as he was touched by these people, he felt powerless. He knew that this might be some kind of unexplained rule of the world in a cup, but he didn't care. He was carried into the bar by these people. This time, he deliberately felt it, and he clearly felt the changes when he changed from a mosaic to a real person. It was really strange. Starting from his feet, a kind of numb feeling swept through his body, like an electric shock. Although he didn't want to admit it, this ticklish feeling was really refreshing. The great Negro jazz musician had long since finished his performance, and was looking at him with a contemptuous expression that seemed to say, "Well, you've lived your whole life on a ship and never seen the world." Chen Guang sat on the stool and rolled up his sleeves. He didn't even want to talk to him. "I'm the main character today, 1900. You're just a looping NPC, and you're destined to be trampled under my feet." The score in front of him had changed, but with the foundation laid by the previous score. This time he finally recognized every symbol from the beginning, and he could generally feel the rhythm of the song. With this brother's ability, this second piece will definitely be written like a god, and my hands will be like Beethoven's. But when he actually played it, it was completely different. When he had just pressed the second key, Chen Guang's head was full of bumps. Okay, I admit it, I really don't have any talent for music. The first piece was forcefully exchanged for tens of thousands of bumps. In fact, he wasn't even sure if it was tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of bumps, because these irritable audience members were too easy to deal with. Time flew, and the square sun outside the bar rose and set. These tireless and irritable audience members accompanied Chen Guang for countless days and nights on the Virginian. They didn't sleep, didn't rest, and threw things that needed to be thrown. The amount of banknotes in the bra of the blonde, blue-eyed, big-breasted waitress could probably be piled up from the earth to the moon. Finally, when the last note was played, Chen Guang let out a long sigh. Brother, I survived again. Chen Guang thought that he could be like 1900 in the movie. After playing a few songs, that jazz musician would be finished. But later, he found out that he was wrong, ridiculously wrong. When the second piece finished, he didn't run out. Instead, he listened to the so-called master play a song. In the end, the guy played the song that he had just played. Hey, you obviously can't play as well as I can. So why are you still looking at me with such arrogant and disdainful eyes? What a drug dealer. That's right. I shouldn't have competed with a looping NPC like you. Then he fell into a terrible nightmare loop. After he finished playing a song, the Black Master would play a song. What was even more shameful was that the guy was obviously not as accurate as him. But he still acted arrogantly at him with a poor and smug look. Chen Guang endured and endured. After playing about 100 songs, he finally couldn't hold it in anymore. With the intention of testing the waters, after he passed the test, he kicked the black man who was playing like he was intoxicated. Hey, this is going to be fun. The strong black man was kicked to the ground, but he actually stood up on his own without a sound, picked up the stool, sat in front of the piano, and played from the beginning. Chen Guang's curiosity was piqued, so he kicked him again. The black man returned to his original expressionless face. He wouldn't get angry no matter how much he was kicked, and he wouldn't get hurt no matter how much he was beaten. He was simply the best sandbag. However, it wasn't good to kick him too many times. It was purely a waste of his time. Chen Guang didn't dawdle with him anymore. Instead, he turned his attention to the other people in the large hall. I'll let this poor black man finish playing. There were at least 400 to 500 people in the cruise ship bar. These people wouldn't resist no matter what. No matter how much they tossed and turned, they would return to their original state after losing Chen Guang's external interference. They had no senses, no emotions, and would only play in a looping pattern. But it just so happened that they felt like real flesh and bones. There was an old white-haired scholar, a tall and strong Caucasian boxer, a noble young woman in luxurious clothes, a mysterious Asian woman in a sorcerer's robe, a lively and cute simple girl, a tall Chinese man in a cheongsam, and so on. Why were the ones that Chen Guang noticed later on all girls? There was a lot of knowledge in this. As the Buddha said, it couldn't be said. But in the end, he didn't do the most ruthless thing. After all, he was a man with a lot of experience. It would be too unambitious to ruin his golden body on these unconscious NPCs. Of course, it was also fortunate that he didn't really have that idea. Although Azure let him go, she had long been secretly guarding against him doing such a stupid thing. If he really dared to do it, the friendship of the Virginians would collapse. In short, thanks to these hard-working NPCs who didn't fight back or scold him, they became the only bright color in Chen Guang's boring piano journey. Today's World in the Cup still carried out the essence of force-feeding, using the loyal audience's incessant spur to make him grit his teeth and play one song after another. He couldn't remember how many songs he played in total. Perhaps it included all the music scores that had ever been recorded in the history of mankind. But in the end, he still couldn't become a real pianist. Even if he had perfect mastery of every song and every key, he still wasn't a pianist. Just as he had speculated at the beginning, playing music required spirituality. This was an innate talent. He didn't have a single bit of that. But the precision and subtle rhythm of playing the piano could be obtained through cruel training. His technique was impeccable, like the most sophisticated instrument, but it had no spirituality. He was the most powerful pianist in history. He could play the most perfect tune according to the music score, but he couldn't write even the slightest pleasant tune himself. Master Light became the most powerful piano player in history. That was all. It was impeccable. Light flashed, and he returned to the sea of clouds, his hands still trembling like they were convulsing. Chapter 360. Actually, he had to thank the Qilin Arm realm, which allowed him to master the terrifying overclocked Qilin Arm in advance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to accomplish such a feat so easily. To become a top-notch pianist, apart from being able to play music, the most important thing was to have a pair of hands suitable for playing the piano. Without years of hard work and muscle memory, it was impossible to become a top-notch pianist. And before Chen Guang entered the world of pianists, he already had the unexplainable Qilin Arm realm. Lily was still typing away at the computer. She snorted through her nose. It feels good, doesn't it? It's alright, that girl in the black robe is really. Get lost. With a kick, Master Guang returned to the modern world. He looked up and saw Zhou Long glaring at him with a face full of hatred. He turned his head and saw a white piano in the corner of the Mercedes-Benz 4S shop. As expected of a Mercedes-Benz, even the 4S shop was so fancy. Then I'll let you down. If the heavens want you dead, you have no choice but to die. I'll give you Liszt's recollections of Don Juan. I hope you like it. Since he had already caused such a ruckus with Zhou Long and Zhuo Jingxi's parents, he had to go through with it. He couldn't give this guy any more guts. He had to step on him. At the same time, he had to make father and mother Zhuo completely give up on this lousy pianist. So, Chen Guang chose the recollections of Don Juan, that Zhou Long would definitely know was amazing. Liszt's recollections of Don Juan, adapted from Mozart's opera, Recollections of Don Juan, had always been known as the most difficult piano piece to play. Saying it was the most difficult might be debatable, but there was no doubt that it was one of the top 10 most difficult pieces in the world. Everyone who dared to perform this piece in public in a concert hall was a famous pianist who had gone through thousands of trials and tribulations and meticulously prepared for it. If one could perform this extremely difficult piece perfectly in public, they would have the chance to be recognized by the world and join the ranks of famous pianists in the country and even the world. With Zhou Long's current level, he could try it a few times in private, but it was impossible for him to perform it in public. Of course, it would be great if he succeeded in challenging a difficult piece, as it would increase his fame. But if he failed, he would lose a lot of face. Of course, different pianists might have different interpretations. Real musicians all had their own personal styles. Music wasn't a mathematical formula. You couldn't say that just because he was faster than the previous performer by 0.1 milliseconds, it would be worse than the original. Perhaps the earliest composer had the same rhythm in this section. Liszt had been dead for a long time, and even if he were to come back to life, he might not dare to say that his version was the most beautiful in history. Music was more perceptual than rational. In the process of playing the piano, there were countless coincidences. When these coincidences were linked together, they formed the pianist's personal style. Some people felt that Horowitz's version was the most beautiful, while others felt that Li Yundi's version was better. Although the two of them didn't seem to be on the same level, everyone who listened to the music could make their own subjective judgment. That's how I feel. There's nothing you can do about it. Music could be objective, but the judgment depended more on the listener's subjective feelings. Everyone had the freedom to choose who they liked more. Even if the same person performed the same piece in different places, with precise instruments, countless variations could be found. No one could tell which was better or worse. There was no first place in literature, and there was no second place in martial arts. It was the same in music. But Chen Guang wasn't like that. He was different from all the pianists in history. He was the most perfect craftsman. The way the music was, the way he played it would be the same. Today I played the same way. In another place, at another time, I played the same way. Even if you used the most precise instrument, you wouldn't be able to find the difference, because I was as precise as you. He had no style. That was his only style. After Chen Guang made his decision, he stood up and looked straight at Zhou Long. Zhou Long, You said that you can play the piano better than me? Zhou Long's heart, which was about to be completely shattered, recovered a little. He said firmly, "Of course. There's a piano over there. I'll give you one last lesson." As Chen Guang spoke, he ignored everyone's astonished gazes and strode towards the white piano. When he was about to reach the piano, he suddenly remembered something and turned around to ask the manager, "Can I use this piano?" The manager was a little hesitant, but finally nodded. Then, Chen Guang sat down and turned his head to Zhuo Jingxi, Zhou Long, and the others who were staring at him in shock. He grinned and said, "Let me give you a Don Juan." As soon as he finished speaking, he began to play. Zhou Long was shocked. He really didn't understand why this kid would challenge him in his own field of expertise. Of course, he knew this was one of the top 10 most difficult songs in the world. Even a professional pianist could easily humiliate himself by challenging this song without preparation, let alone a young man who didn't look like a pianist. Zhuo Jingxi was even more confused than Zhou Long. Although she had only been Chen Guang's tutor for half a semester, she had asked a lot about him in class, but she had never heard that he could play the piano. He knew that Zhou Long was a new master pianist in the country, so why would he want to compete with Zhou Long on this matter for no reason? Could it be that this kid had been hiding his skills all this time? But that didn't make sense. You've really hidden yourself too deeply. Based on Zhuo Jingxi's understanding of Chen Guang, this guy was the kind of person who wanted the whole world to know about his skills, just like his English and his driving skills. According to Lin Jingwei, he was almost invincible in games. But after 30 seconds, Zhuo Jingxi no longer had any doubts about Chen Guang. His hands were like smooth water, and like butterflies flying up and down, cheering and jumping on the piano keys. Beautiful notes burst out from under his fingers at an extremely fast speed, knocking on Zhuo Jingxi's heart. Zhou Long's face became paler and paler. He had recently practiced this song, so of course he knew how difficult it was. Chen Guang's performance was so precise that even with his professional ears, he couldn't pick out any flaws. But this wasn't what scared Zhou Long the most. 5 minutes later, Zhou Long finally realized the horror of Chen Guang's piano skills. Of course, there were people who had performed Don Juan reminiscences in public, but even the world-famous masters would often be accompanied by extremely intense body language when performing this song. The expression on their faces would be uncontrollable because they were completely immersed in it, sometimes ferocious, sometimes even more ferocious. But Chen Guang wasn't like this. He was smiling from beginning to end, and even turned his head to look around from time to time. But the movements of his hands never slowed down or became chaotic. Casual precision. This was the most suitable word that Zhou Long could think of to describe Chen Guang's current state. It was too scary. How good was this person to be able to play Don Juan reminiscences, like he was taking a stroll in the park? Zhou Long didn't know that Chen Guang wasn't pretending to look around. He was really worried that someone would take a photo of him. He had posted on Weibo as an almighty Superman, and now he wasn't wearing a mask. If someone took a video and posted it online, it was inevitable that they would associate it with the almighty Superman. Fortunately, no one took a photo of him for the time being. Zhou Long's mind was in a state of confusion. Impossible, absolutely impossible. This isn't something a human can do. I don't believe he can still do this after 10 minutes. I don't believe it. Chapter 361. 10 minutes later, Chen Guang was still as calm as ever. He even turned his head to speak again, his hands still moving. "Brother," who's about to take out his phone, "can you please not take pictures of me? I'm a businessman. I don't want to be famous, thank you." The man put away his phone, feeling wronged. Zhuo Jingxi even went up to watch him delete the video he had taken. Zhou Long, who was beside her, broke down. This was unreasonable. He could play Don Juan and chat with people at the same time? Chen Guang spoke again, his face still carrying that indifferent smile. He turned his head to the side and grinned. "See, there's nothing great about playing the piano. It's just that I'm not interested in it. It's getting a bit boring. Xiao Cici, take out your phone. I want to read the second season of Report Boss." When Zhuo Jingxi placed her phone on the piano, and Chen Guang laughed while playing the piano and watching Report Boss, Zhou Long completely broke down. From beginning to end, he played casually and casually, but the tune he played was as steady as a CD player. I'll tolerate this. But you're playing while watching a funny web drama. You're insulting art. You're insulting my character. I can't tolerate this. But Zhou Long knew that he couldn't do what Chen Guang did. Even when Chen Guang finally pressed the last note and got up to hug Zhuo Jingxi again, he still hadn't regained his composure. Although father and mother Zhuo didn't know much about music, just by looking at Zhou Long's shocked expression, they knew who was better and who was worse. Although they didn't know why, this Chen Guang seemed to be much better at playing the piano than Zhou Long. Looking at Zhuo Jingxi's timid and helpless appearance from beginning to end, the two elders found a reason to overcome this hurdle in their hearts. Young people's futures should be decided by young people themselves. Perhaps this was ironic and ridiculous, but if father and mother Zhuo didn't think this way, they couldn't explain the sudden change in their attitudes towards Chen Guang. This was an ugly way of thinking, but it was more practical. Zhou Long turned around in a daze and looked at the two elders with pleading eyes. The two elders awkwardly turned their faces to the side. They really did not want to face Zhou Long's plea. Uncle, Auntie, are you guys just going to watch as that brat, Chen Guang, and Jingxi are hugging each other? Zhou Long questioned. Father Zhuo and mother Zhuo didn't answer him, but some of the people who had been watching the show couldn't help but burst out laughing. This chuckle was long and meaningful. Papa Zhuo was so embarrassed that his face was as red as blood. Mama Zhuo, after all, was someone who had seen the world. Little Zhou, there's nothing we can do, right? As you can see, Jingxi really likes Chen Guang. As elders, we have to respect the young people's own ideas. Auntie, you. Mother Zhuo's skills were still profound. Although it was difficult to deal with Chen Guang against Zhuo Long, this sentence was enough to make him despair. The same plot, different reasons, but mother Zhuo had a similar goal. The only difference was that mother Zhuo had always been on his side, but now she was supporting Chen Guang. Zhou Long finally understood Zhuo Jingxi's helplessness. It was undeniable that he might really like Zhuo Jingxi. Now that he was successful in his own field, he was still determined to come back and marry Zhuo Jingxi. Using father Zhuo and mother Zhuo's coercion to force Zhuo Jingxi to submit wasn't a very honorable method. Wanting to treat her as a canary wasn't a good starting point. His moral integrity of going out to buy a car and quickly hooking up with a female salesperson was shattered to the ground. Normally, he did use his fame and power to sleep with some female students or new artists who were eager to advance. But in the end, he really wanted to marry Zhuo Jingxi. If it wasn't for Chen Guang, he might have succeeded today. But now, he had become a pitiful stray dog. In front of him was a chance to make a comeback. That was to sit on the piano and play a section of Recollections of Don Juan, in his best condition to prove that he was a professional pianist. But he didn't dare. Little Zhou, forget it. You can't force it. Papa Zhuo walked up to him. Zhou Long couldn't remember how many times he had heard this sentence today, but it was the first time Papa Zhuo said it. It had a deeper meaning. You'll regret it. He finally broke down and pointed at Chen Guang. This brat is definitely not the best man for Jingxi. You'll regret it. Are you threatening me? Chen Guang's face darkened. Zhou Long took 2 steps back, his heart trembling. I'm not threatening you. But you're worse than me. No matter how bad I am, I still love Jingxi with all my heart. You're just playing with her. I can't feel any feelings from the way you look at her. Zhou Long was right. Chen Guang just happened to be at the right time today. From the beginning, he had only planned to help Zhuo Jingxi put on this show. Unfortunately, his acting was a little disappointing to the audience. So what? You can't have a double standard. In your world, money is enough. In my world, it should be the same, right? Chen Guang shrugged. In terms of money, you lost. In terms of playing the piano, you also lost. In terms of position in Zhuo Jingxi's heart, you lost completely. Now in terms of importance to the two elders, you lost completely. That's right. I want to trample on you from every angle. His words sounded a little shameless, but Papa Zhuo and Papa Zhuo didn't refute him. Zhuo Jingxi felt a little sad, but also relieved. After Chen Guang's mess, she was indeed free from now on. Unless Chen Guang really wanted her? With that thought, She turned her head to look at Chen Guang in fright, only to find him winking mischievously at her. Zhuo Jingxi laughed inwardly. This guy. Forget it. I don't care about him. I'm just overthinking things. The human heart was really complicated. She felt a little disappointed. In the end, Zhou Long didn't say anything more. He turned around and left. At that moment, it was useless for him to say anything. Seeing Zhou Long leave with his tail between his legs, the show came to an end. The few people who were still watching the show went back to their own business. The family of four sat in the VIP resting area of the 4S store and waited for a while. There was still some time before the staff went to the vehicle management office to prepare the household registration. Mama Zhua had a fake warm smile on her face. She leaned over and said, "Little Chen, when do you plan to settle your marriage with Xiaoxi?" Chen Guang waved his hand. "Auntie, don't say that. It's not set in stone yet." What? What do you mean?" Mama Zhua looked confused. Chen Guang chuckled. He planned to hit them in the head. It didn't matter if his acting was bad, as long as the lines were good. Anyway, he had already acted like a nouveau riche. He might as well pour cold water on the two of them, lest they went back to pressuring Zhuo Jingxi because of him. Chapter 362. Just as you told me before, Auntie, as long as a man is doing it for his career, you don't mind even if he's fooling around outside. I'll just say it out loud. Right now my net worth is in the hundreds of millions. He swallowed his saliva and laughed inwardly. 100 million was still 100 million. So my career is indeed very successful, right? For the sake of my career, sometimes there are many things that are beyond my control. To put it simply, if I want to marry and have children, I have to be of equal status. You understand? Also, my appetite is very big. If she alone can't satisfy me, then I'll be unhappy. If I'm in a bad mood, my business decisions will go wrong and my career will be affected. So to make me happy, Uncle and Auntie, you won't object to me finding a woman outside, right? They didn't expect Chen Guang's words to be so straightforward. Father and Mother Zhua's faces turned green. Even though Zhuo Long had such plans, he didn't say it out loud. But this Chen brat's straightforwardness caught the two elders completely off guard. Zhuo Jingxi was almost pinching the flesh on Chen Guang's waist to mush. But Chen Guang's expression didn't change, and his heart didn't beat a beat. Mother Zhua's face turned green and white. She didn't expect him to be so shameless. Uncle and Auntie, don't look at me like that. I'm just like that. I speak frankly and say whatever I want to say. As a businessman, I'm under a lot of pressure. Of course, my sincerity towards Xiaoxi can't be faked. Even if I can't marry her in the future because of various reasons, I can guarantee that she won't be poor for the rest of her life. Other than a marriage certificate, she'll have everything she needs. Of course, I'm a selfish person. Once she's with me, she'll always belong to me. I don't want to waste my time arguing with a small character like Zhuo Long in the future. I hope you two can understand, and you must understand. After saying this, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he pretended to be unfathomable and remained silent. Zhuo Jingxi was helpless and had a headache. She felt that asking him to chase Zhuo Long away was inviting trouble for herself. But now that things had come to this, she couldn't explain anything. Father Zhuo and Mother Zhuo looked at each other in dismay. They were a little angry, but they didn't know what to say. They really couldn't summon up the courage to be cold. They were the ones who went back on their words. Now that the little sapling, Zhou Long, had been chased away, they really didn't want to chase away the towering tree, Chen Guang. From a personality point of view, this young man named Chen Guang was definitely not a good match. Who would talk to his parents-in-law like this? But he was really rich. They didn't sit for long before Chen Guang remembered the real purpose of this trip. While there was still some time, he hurriedly dragged them to the Volkswagen 4S shop next door. After entering the shop, he stared at the phaeton without saying a word. It was the only phaeton left in the shop. It was already out of print, and there was only one phaeton left in the shop. It took 30 seconds to negotiate, 5 minutes to sign the contract, and 10 minutes to swipe the card. That wasn't all. The 1.7 million phaeton was not a top-tier luxury car. The real top-tier thing was what Chen Guang said when he returned to the Mercedes-Benz shop after signing the contract. Remove the logo at the back of the car and replace it with the Passat's logo. I want it to look exactly like a real Passat. Although the Phaeton looked like a Passat but was a luxury car worth millions, people often complained that people who bought a Phaeton were low-key, luxurious, and sophisticated. So far, Chen Guang was the only one who was so bold that he wanted to replace the logo with a Passat's logo. The salesperson in the Volkswagen 4S shop was stunned. "Sir, you're not joking?" Chen Guang's face darkened. "Look at my sincere eyes. Do I look like I'm joking?" The poor salesperson, who had been traumatized, shook his head blankly. "No. That's it then. That's it. Actually, I'm not buying a Phaeton, but a longer and wider Passat. You know what I mean?" Until Chen Guang and the others left the Volkswagen 4S shop, the salesperson was still in a state of complete confusion. The manager stood beside him and said softly, "Rich and willful." The salesperson nodded vigorously. "Quite willful." The manager nodded. "I feel sorry for our out-of-print Phaeton." Zhuo Jingxi pulled Chen Guang and walked quickly in front, deliberately distancing herself from the two elders who were completely confused. Why are you doing this?" Zhuo Jingxi looked at him in distress. She only felt that she loved and hated this guy at the same time. He was really trying his best to help her, but his methods were too harsh. Chen Guang made a pained expression. "Teacher Zhuo, I didn't want to do this. But if you look at it this way, I'm saying all this for you. In the future, although uncle and auntie will definitely hate me, you won't have to worry about them forcing you to do anything. Other than that, they definitely won't want us to look for them all the time. Out of sight, out of mind. Think about it, we're both pretending. The more we meet, the more your mother is, the more she'll find out sooner or later. I'm completely sacrificing my image to help you." Zhuo Jingxi looked at him blankly. That was true. Chen Guang was very popular in class. With his personality, how could he be like this today? "Sai, thank you." Zhuo Jingxi couldn't help but feel touched. He had indeed sacrificed a lot. Chen Guang grunted. "You're welcome. It's what I should do. Please call me Lei Hong." "Comrade Lei Hong, can you stop putting your hand on my butt? It's so embarrassing." Zhuo Jingxi's face was red. Chen Guang was unmoved. "When you're acting, you have to go all the way. You have to destroy your image completely. Arrogant, overbearing, black-bellied, lecherous, uncultured homebody tycoon. These are all synonyms for me in your parents' hearts. For example, what I'm doing now is also very meaningful. But you've been touching it for a long time. Maybe it got stuck with superglue and can't be pulled off." Zhuo Jingxi sighed and looked up at the distant sky. She felt that she had done something stupid today. After sending Zhou Long away, she welcomed Chen Guang. She had invited a wolf into her house. His skin was as thick as a city wall. "Why didn't I realize you had this potential before? If I had known, I would have stayed away from you. I'm sorry. Now that the 700,000 yuan car is under your name, you can't get off my boat. I forgot to tell you that we're not related at all. You'll have to pay taxes for the car transfer. It'll be at least a few tens of thousands." Zhuo Jingxi felt even more hopeless. In the end, Zhuo Jingxi's parents did not make it until Zhuo Jingxi went to the vehicle management office. They barely managed to hold on for another half an hour before leaving with their noses pinched. Before they left, they really regretted one thing. Was it right or wrong of them to sell their daughter in the past? When he sold her to Zhou Long, he was hypocritical enough and was willing to cover it up in front of his parents. His parents thought it was okay, but out of sight, out of mind. Now that they had sold her for a better price, they could not bring themselves to be happy. They really could not stand Chen Guang's undisguised frivolity and insolence. He wantonly played with Zhuo Jingxi's buttocks in front of them. Staying with a man like this for the rest of her life, no matter how much money she had, would she be happy? Chen Guang watched his parents walk away with a heavy heart. Without waiting for Zhuo Jingxi to say anything, he took his hand back and turned to look at Zhuo Jingxi with a serious expression. "Teacher Zhuo, trust me. Your parents will reflect on their actions when they go home." Zhuo Jingxi looked at his incomparably clear eyes without a trace of distracting thoughts. She originally wanted to scold him, but she couldn't say a single word. After a while, she only sighed and said heavily once again, "Thank you." Chapter 363. Following that, Chen Guang accompanied her to pick up the car and drove behind her. He accompanied her, a novice, all the way back to the neighborhood outside Gokyo University where she rented. From beginning to end, he did not make any excessive moves. Until the two of them parted, Zhuo Jingxi was still pondering over his changes. After her parents left, he returned to his original self. He was a little uncomfortable, but there was no more pressure in his heart. "Teacher Zhuo, then I'm leaving. Call me when you're ready to do an experiment in a few days. If there's nothing else, I'll come and disturb you." Chen Guang chuckled as he greeted her, revved the accelerator, and drove away in the widened Passat. When there was no one around, he parked the car on the side of the road. His eyes were almost crescent-shaped, and his face was wretched. "I'm going to give up on myself. Why am I so talented? I can take advantage of others in such a justified manner. I'm simply a genius." It was a pity that Teacher Zhuo still couldn't let it go. Fortunately, the old man was quick-witted and immediately restrained himself when he realized that the situation was not good. Sure enough, he was deceived by her. "I miss my void refresh double. I don't know when I'll have such an opportunity again." Sigh. Zhuo Jingxi watched Chen Guang leave with a similarly disappointed expression. She then turned her head to look at the Mercedes-Benz E400L parked next to her, and her heart was even more confused. How did I end up with such an amazing student? What should I do in the future? Can I still use the mentality of facing ordinary students to deal with him? No matter what, her right buttocks were still itching, and she could vaguely feel a pair of big hands rubbing it. When she thought of his ambiguous attitude after her parents left, Zhuo Jingxi was slightly relieved, but also felt a faint sense of regret. She didn't want to admit it, but it was the truth. Back in the dormitory, Chen Guang put aside his miscellaneous thoughts, turned on the computer, logged into Dota, and thought about recording a video of himself playing games to post on Weibo. The almighty Superman account had to be operated and kept popular. In a few days, he would look for Lu Fei and see if she had a piano. She could help him record a video of him playing the piano and post it on Weibo, so that those ordinary people could see what a real shadowless hand was. Other than that, it was about time for the Sword Pagoda Battle team to start working. Liuli could cheat her father at any time. Who knew when she would wake up one day and be back to the time before liberation? When it came to spending money, she had to race against time to save her family property. Perhaps, after Liuli demonstrated her capability as a God Emperor-level financial butler, he would have to rely on being an internet celebrity to survive. Just thinking about it made him a little sad. Forget it. Being an internet celebrity was better than being a little brother on the internet. With the heavenly holy grail in his hands, everything went smoothly. Chen Guang couldn't think of what he should pursue at the moment, so he simply stopped thinking about it. It was enough for him to focus on the things that he could do well in front of him. He didn't turn on the recording for the first one, so he was very comfortable with it. Although Carl the Summoner had been weakened recently, he was still able to use it smoothly. In the second round, Carl was snatched by the other side. Chen Guang had decisively chosen a Fengxing mid-laner, but in the end, a guy who boasted of himself as an expert appeared and snatched Spirit of Ashes from him. After the two of them quarreled for a long time, Chen Guang had no choice but to add this guy as a friend and let him see his recent achievements before he was finally convinced. Without Liuli pretending to be Jiang Luhua, Chen Guang was unstoppable and decisively ended the game with 27 kills and 0 deaths. Unknowingly, after the second round, his celestial ladder points had actually crossed the threshold of 5,000 points. Looking through the battle record, as long as he didn't encounter Jiang Luhua in a solo match, he would win all of them. If he encountered Jiang Luhua, his winning rate would plummet to only 27%. This couldn't help but make him a little discouraged. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that he wasn't the man with the highest level of Sword Pagoda in the world. At this time, Liuli's voice suddenly came from the bottom of his heart. Don't think about this nonsense. Hurry up and think of a way to complete all the previous worlds and cups, and build a statue of a god for this lady. It's rare that you're so motivated. So I'll give you the authority to use 10 million yuan. Do as you see fit. I've thrown the money to you. But if you still can't build a statue of a god, I'll let you die a very profound death. F***ck. Don't scare me. Chen Guang was stunned. He had originally planned to do something. But now that she had threatened him like this, he suddenly had to do it. Wait, what the hell do you mean by the authority to use funds? Do you mean you can freeze my account at UBS? I don't believe you. Chen Guang noticed this problem again. Lily chuckled. Of course this empress doesn't need to freeze your bank account. I only need to freeze you. What you said makes sense. I actually have nothing to say. All right, don't dawdle. Hurry up and erect the statue of a god. I have a big plan. And it's still not enough to rely on a statue of Aotua. It's very urgent and very critical. Do as you see fit. If you can't build 2 statues of a god within a month, I'll really send you into the cup world while you're squatting to relieve yourself. Lioli disappeared after she finished speaking. F***ck. Aren't I preparing to build a team to get the statue of a god? But the time you gave me is too tight. I can't even make it in time, okay? I protest. The protest was ineffective, and Lioli completely stopped moving. Chen Guang silently raised his head. He first thought of a term, king of anal prolapse. Then he thought of another term, you want to die. He then turned his head to look at the computer screen in front of him. He concentrated for a long time. I have a hard life, what should I do? Previously, he wanted to build a team, and then participate in the International Invitational Tournament. As long as he could follow this plan step by step, everything would be in the bag. But suddenly Lioli threw out a time limit. Only 1 month. He wasn't a registered player yet, so he didn't have the qualifications to participate in the official tournament. The next heavyweight summer tournament would only start in August. He couldn't make it in time no matter what. God, save me. What should I do? His mind was a mess. After racking his brains for a long time, Chen Guang uploaded the recorded video. He then wiped his tears. Forget it. He had to get first place in the national server to calm his nerves. In the next few days, other than walking around the city, after waking up early in the morning to greet his mother and father, Chen Guang spent most of his time in his dormitory. His original plan to be Lu Fei's mistress was temporarily postponed. It wasn't that he didn't want to go, but he was really afraid of becoming the king of anal prolapse. He was very anxious, but in his current state, he could at most fight 5 matches in a row. If he continued, he would feel dizzy and nauseous. After that, he had to do something else to divert his attention and rest for an hour or so before he could continue fighting. During his fatigue period, he couldn't even read the version update instructions, let alone fight the Dota. Although it was difficult, he still managed to endure it. He used to think that his body was strong and his meals were delicious, but in the end, he underestimated the power of the game. On the 7th day, when he walked into the ward as usual, Chen Guoli was shocked by his 2 huge dark circles and slightly raised cheekbones. It was as if he had seen a ghost. What made Chen Guang's head hurt even more was that Chen Guoli didn't interrogate him about what he had been busy with in the dormitory recently. Instead, he patted his shoulder with tears streaming down his face. Son, it's been hard on you. It seems that the folk remedy I made last time still can't hold on. As Chen Guoli spoke, he took a deep puff of his cigarette and added, it's too scary. Celebrities nowadays are really too scary. Wait a minute. Dad, what are you thinking about again? His dad's thoughts were too broad, and Chen Guang couldn't take it. Chapter 364. Chen Guang quickly waved his hand. Don't. I'm begging you, don't give me any more of those folk remedies. I can't take any more, or I'll die. But you can't do this. Sooner or later, you'll be squeezed dry, won't you? Chen Guoli was still worried. All right, don't worry about it. Dr. Tang already knows about this. I've already made a deal with her. She'll treat me. Now that things had come to this, Chen Guang had no choice but to use his walk shifting again. Lies were like cancer. Once they were planted, they would continue to spread in the soul. Is that so? In order to prove that he was really willing to accept treatment, Chen Guang had no choice but to find an opportunity to bring Chen Guoli to Tang Ying. He desperately winked at her, then said with a sullen face, "Dr. Tang, hurry up and persuade my dad. He's going to give me that expensive tonic soup again. I can't take it anymore." Before Tang Ying could speak, Chen Guoli said, "Dr. Tang, I won't hide it from you anymore. Hurry up and save Chen Guang. His kidney deficiency is really getting worse." Tang Ying turned to look at Chen Guang with a blank face. "Those dark circles under your eyes are obviously from staying up all night. It has nothing to do with kidney deficiency." Tang Ying recalled what happened that night. Although she couldn't understand why Chen Guang didn't explain to Chen Guoli that he was actually not weak, Tang Ying was almost blinded by this guy's sneaky winks. "Uncle Chen, don't worry. I've been following up on his condition for a few days. Don't worry too much. It's not a big deal." Chen Guoli was still uneasy. "Really?" Tang Ying nodded heavily. "Don't worry. Dad, hurry up and leave. Mom is still waiting for you. Anyway, don't give me that folk remedy anymore. I really don't need it." Chen Guang couldn't take it anymore and quickly pushed Chen Guoli away. "Aren't you fine? Why didn't you tell your dad?" After Chen Guoli walked far away, Tang Ying looked at Chen Guang suspiciously. Did this guy get lucky once and become addicted to that feeling? "Sigh, it's a long story, really a long story. If God gives me another chance, I will be an honest man." After saying that, Chen Guang turned around and ran. He couldn't stay here any longer. This guy. Tang Ying stomped her feet. He didn't say anything, but she felt like she was being teased. On the other hand, Chen Guang was thinking that fortunately, his mother would be discharged in 2 days. When they returned to their hometown, he would be free. He actually wanted to go back, but Chen Guoli was determined not to let him go back. He only said that he had lost a lot of his studies this year because of his family's matters. He wanted him to make up for it in school and not go back. He had just returned to school and parked his car when he suddenly received a call from Bai Nyangzi. "What's up?" Bai Nyangzi was shocked and shouted, "Brother Guang, you're King God." Chen Guang snorted. "Yeah, see that big hole in the sky? I did it. Spit it out if you have something to say. Say it clearly. You don't know what's going on?" Bai Nyangzi's voice sounded terrified. "If you keep me guessing, you'd better come to school wearing iron underwear when school reopens. Otherwise, I'll make you bleed." Bai Nyangzi was frightened by Chen Guang's threat. Don't. I think you really don't know. Recently, you've been playing on your Dota account, right?" "Yes, why?" Chen Guang was still confused. "You got more than 2,000 points in 6 days. Did you take drugs? Did you take stimulants to get to the celestial ladder?" Bai Nyangzi was almost hysterical as he roared. "Do you know, today I brought a few grandsons from high school to play games? I boasted to them that there was an almighty in our dormitory, but they didn't believe me, which made me so angry. I opened up your record and wanted to watch it. Do you know how I felt at that time?" Then Bai Nyangzi took a deep breath and shouted, "At that time, I felt like I was in heaven. You actually got 7,254 points." Chen Guang pouted. All right, I thought it was something big. That Jianglioa seems to have 8,800 points, right? My 7,000 points is nothing, it's still too early. I've been bored in the dormitory these past few days, so I played a little more. It's normal to get points. What's there to make a fuss about? Hee. For a moment, Bai Nyangzi was speechless. Yes, it's normal to get more points. But why don't you King look at your own battle record? I've counted it for you. Up till now, you have 99 consecutive victories. Today, I don't know who also found out about this and posted your battle record on the internet. Tieba and SG have exploded, alright? 99 consecutive wins? Chen Guang hadn't noticed it himself, but after hearing Bai Nyangzi's words, he suddenly realized that he hadn't lost in a long time. 99 consecutive wins in the celestial ladder. You're really going against the heavens. On the other side, Bai Nyangzi was still shouting in shock. But Chen Guang wasn't in the mood to listen to him anymore. Alright, I'll go back to the dormitory to see what's going on. Not long after he hung up, Lin Jingwei called again, and like Bai Nyangzi he said, I'm going to kneel to you. I don't even want to kneel to you. Chen Guang felt like he couldn't catch his breath from the wind that the two of them brought. Before he entered the dormitory, he decisively hung up on Xiong'er's call. He didn't even want to pick it up. It was nothing more than nonsense like, "Almighty, kneel to me. I love you for 10,000 years. Teach me when you're free." When he reached the dormitory, he turned on the computer to take a look. Sure enough, the rhythm was flying. In this kind of MOBA esports game, there was often an almost metaphysical 50% win rate law in the matchmaking mode. Anyone who could break the 50% win rate law was an expert who could continuously increase their score. Apart from the equally abnormal Jianglioa, the current strongest player with 8,500 points had a win rate as high as 61%. But Chen Guang hadn't lost a match since last month, which meant that in this month, his win rate was 100%. Dota was a team game, and even the strongest player couldn't beat his deceptive teammates. After a lot of matches, there would always be a lot of bottomless pits of teammates. Many times, when the match was intense, victory or defeat was often decided by a single thought, and there was a lot of chance involved. Even the best player in a fish pond would accidentally step into a pit, and when he pulled himself out, his legs would be full of feces, and he would drown in the fish pond. Of course, according to the historical records, there was indeed a Korean professional player who had a terrifying record of 105 consecutive wins. But the opponent's winning streak was interspersed with a lot of ordinary matches, professional matches where both sides crushed each other's strength, as well as all kinds of group training matches. Moreover, the authenticity of these records was questionable. On the other hand, Chen Guang's 99 consecutive victories were clearly displayed in the records. Everyone could look it up on the website, and they could even watch the recordings of each match. This was really scary. In 6 days, he had gone from 5,000 points to 7,200 points, withstanding several times when his teammates dropped the game midway, internal conflicts, and when he accidentally filmed himself with a live streamer, the other side peeked at him the whole time. And so on, he had achieved an incredible 99 consecutive wins. Every match was an indisputable victory. Whether it was on Tieba or the Super Game Forum, it had completely exploded. At first, some people had questioned whether this brother was a super point collector, but when someone unearthed the highlights behind his ID, the direction of public opinion changed, and everyone agreed that he was indeed a hidden expert with an unknown identity. Then, more and more people watched each of his matches, and countless players discovered that this guy was simply a natural source material. Almost every match could be used as a source material. He showed off to the extreme, always showing off the whole audience and never failing. The public opinion became one-sided, and there was only one word to describe him: animal. An indisputable animal. Chapter 365. After taking a stroll around the internet, Chen Guang felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction in his heart. As a noob who used to have 3,000 points, it was impossible for him not to feel proud after playing blindly for a few days. He logged into his account and saw that there were so many friend requests that he couldn't count them all. However, Chen Guang didn't have many friends to begin with. At this time, he didn't know many of these friend requests, so he wasn't interested. He entered the rhythm of playing solo every day. Now that he had over 7,000 points, he could gradually enter the circle of professional players. Chen Guang began to ponder whether he should take the initiative to add 2 professional players as friends, and see if he could take the opportunity to sneak into their circle in one go. Right now, this brother's rhythm is flying everywhere. I'm a proper celebrity. It shouldn't be too much to add them as friends, right? After the match was successfully made, he loaded the game and entered the player selection interface. Immediately, one of his teammates shouted, F***CK, Brother Lian Sheng. Chen Guang turned on the microphone and chuckled. Hey, no one wants to fight me for the mid lane, right? Actually, there was another professional player in the team with 8,000 points. I'll let you win. Chen Guang was happy. Thank you. If I win this match, I'll have a 100-win streak. That professional player was quite generous. He immediately said, then I'll turn off the live stream. After choosing his champion and entering, The people on the other side sent him messages. Some people mocked Chen Guang's winning streak record. Some said to add him as a friend after the match, and some asked why the professional player's live stream had been cut off. Chen Guang's teammates simply replied a few words, and then fully focused on the game. This time, he had really met a good teammate. They knew that he was aiming for a 100-win streak, so they were all very serious. The number of spectators outside of the game continued to rise. There was no need to say who dared to go easy on others in this match. Needless to say, the pace of the forum immediately soared. The entire match was quite intense. The opponent was also a pro player with 8,000 points, and 4 pro players with 7,000 points. The two sides fought back and forth. Fortunately, Chen Guang, a person with low HP but high HP, acted as the last straw that broke the camel's back. The final score was 73-69. The two sides fought for 90 minutes and exchanged bases. Chen Guang was ahead by 100 HP and successfully destroyed the enemy's base. He finally won this unprecedented battle, allowing the tens of thousands of spectators to enjoy an amazing visual feast. Before anyone realized it, many streamers on the live streaming platform had already put up the title, "Let's witness an unprecedented 100-game winning streak in the Celestial Stairway Tournament." As a gimmick, he treated this random game as if it was a competition. With 18 kills, 3 deaths and 14 assists, Chen Guang handed in a satisfactory answer sheet for his 100-game winning streak. After the match, Chen Guang added the pro player who had given him the mid laner as a friend. He asked him about official competitions, and then completely gave up on the idea of forming a team. There was no time. There was no time at all. He did not expect the current professional esports circle to be so formal. There was a fixed time for players to register. Furthermore, there was a dead not like the transfer period. This was not a problem that could be solved with money. In other words, this was not something that Chen Guang could change with his current net worth. He was still not rich enough. However, Azure rarely asked him to do something so clearly. Now that she had asked, Chen Guang did not dare to fool her. If he said 1 month, he definitely could not be late by a day. This gave him a headache, and he did not dare to relax. At the same time, after the match, he went to the forums in Tiebao again. This time, it was a complete explosion. From 99 consecutive wins to 100 consecutive wins. Even if it was just one more win, it was a qualitative change from double digits to triple digits. The sensation that it caused on the internet was on a completely different level. Yesterday, only 1/3 of the posts on the forums in Tieba were talking about his winning streak. Today it was completely different. Posts about this player named the strongest brother Guang's 100-game winning streak took up almost 70% of the forums. How can I accept this? Chen Guang chuckled. He was really embarrassed by all the flattery. He did not expect that even with the thick skin of the old man, there would be a day when he could not take it. As far as the eye could see, there was an overwhelming number of diehard fans. Some of the words even made him, the initiator, feel embarrassed. What? There would definitely be haters? He did not see them. When he was posting on Weibo, he had already mastered the skill to automatically filter out haters. After browsing the forums for half a day, he put down his computer and suddenly had a vague feeling in his heart. He fiercely clapped his hands. It seemed that he had been going in the wrong direction all along. He always wanted to prove that he was the strongest in the world, so he had to win the International Invitational Tournament. Actually, looking at it now, this was a completely wrong way of thinking. Just like his racing, he did not participate in the WRC rally race that was broadcasted live on TV. Instead, he only created history in the Xiangjiang gambling race that was influential in the underground racing world. It was basically the same for the Dota incident. He did not necessarily have to win the official championship. He just had to become the undisputed strongest player that everyone knew at a glance. Everyone ridiculed God Wanjin every day, but they were just saying it. No one had really done it. In this way, I will take the throne of God Wanjin in the Chinese server, European server, American server, and Southeast Asian server. Regardless of whether I participate in the international competition or not, there will at least be countless people who will recognize me as the number one in the world, right? Suddenly he had a goal. He was relaxed and happy. He sprinted towards Godwanjin. In the next 7 days, he really rushed to score points like crazy. His winning streak ended at 135 rounds. Not only did this not affect his condition, but it made him even more unstoppable. When he finally stopped rushing to score points, his celestial stairway points had already stopped at the terrifying number of 10,059. Godwanjin, who had been ridiculed for many years, finally turned from a joke to a reality. The whole country was jubilant. Even the professional player who added him as a friend was instructed by the team leader to ask him if he was interested in becoming a professional player. Actually, this professional player did not know that recently, Chen Guang had also become obsessed. Many times, he simply placed the trash can beside him, vomiting as he played. Originally, he could only play 15 rounds a day, but now he was forced to play a few more rounds. To others, this was a game, but to Chen Guang, playing until the last few rounds every day was completely torture. Thus, he tactfully rejected the other party's invitation. It was not that he was incapable to become a professional player, but that he could not hold on. Other than that, in these 7 days, Chen Guoli and Feng Rong went back to their hometown. Chen Guang happily drove the two of them back in his phaeton. As expected, Chen Guoli admitted his mistake. He treated his phaeton as a Passat, and lectured him that even if he had some spare money now, he should not have bought a car that cost 200,000 to 300,000 yuan. He should have been more thrifty. Chen Guang was speechless. A person who spent 200,000 yuan to drink soup had the cheek to lecture him? He had wanted to stay in his hometown for a day. But when he reached home, Chen Guoli immediately chased him away. To put it nicely, he said, "Hurry back and prepare for the makeup exam. I have already asked your counselor. You have failed n number of classes this semester." Therefore, Master Guang bitterly rushed back to Wujing that day. He did not dare to look for Zhuo Jingxi, who had successfully complained. She had been immersed in the laboratory for the past 2 days. She had made a few phone calls, urging Chen Guang to quickly be her experimental assistant. But now was the crucial time to break through to Godwanjin. He did not want to be a strong man squatting in the laboratory, so he began to look for weapons to climb over the wall and prepare to fight the foreign server. The foreign server's Godwanjin was much easier to fight than the domestic server. Chapter 366. Even though he was using a wall-climbing weapon, and the delay was much higher than the local server, Chen Guang was still able to play smoothly. However, there was one thing that gave him a headache. Even though he could always easily beat the other party into 20 rounds, he could not stand the fact that the points were too slow. In the past, as long as a person's level reached 13, they could participate in the Celestial Stairway solo tournament, but now it had suddenly become 50. It was really hard for him to love it. Azure, help me think of a way. The old man has thousands of killing skills, but he can only play in normal games. What should I do? After a day of hard fighting, Chen Guang looked at his level climbing like a tortoise. He had no choice but to complain to Azure. "I can play on your behalf." Azure finally said something sensible. Her figure gradually appeared. Thank goodness, she was wearing a bikini this time. "Nice clothes, beautiful." Chen Guang flattered her decisively. Azure rolled her eyes at him. "Isn't it all because of you? The lustrous feather raiment has shrunk to this extent." Chen Guang had already cursed this scammer, who used the godly power distribution machine 10,000 times in his heart. "You were the one who became a prodigal, but now you have the cheek to say that it was for me. What a drugstore scammer." In the end, what he said was, "Thank you for your hard work, my goddess. I will never forget your great kindness. You were just saying that I was a scammer, right?" "All right, actually." Azure knew everything that Chen Guang was thinking. "Don't mind those details. You really have to help me this time. Think about it. I'm only given a month's time, and I have to dominate 4 servers. Although I'm strong enough, I don't have enough time. Based on my calculations, I'll need at least 3 months. Why don't you give me a little more time?" Chen Guang and Azure laughed. It was so tiring to chat with the worm in his stomach. He had no privacy at all. What if he had sex with someone in the future? Puffed. I'm not interested in your trivial matters. How big is a 3-inch piece of meat like you? When I revert to my original form, I'm tens of thousands of feet tall. When I spread my legs, the gap is tens of thousands of feet wide. When you crawl in, it's like a speck of dust. I don't even feel anything. Holy shit. Was there anything in this world that could hurt a man more than this? No, absolutely not. It's my loss, said Yifutian. It's good that you know how powerful you are. Don't think that I'm interested in your trivial matters. All right, let's put the matter of the celestial stairway aside for now. I'm personally playing for you. You're really giving me a hard life. It's bad enough that I'm your butler, but I actually have to help you level up in the game. I'm really a father and a mother at the same time, dragging you along with me. I'm really tired, but I'll say this up front. If I'm busy with this, I won't have time to sort out my business. If the investment fails, it'll be your own fault, Lily said with a straight face. In fact, she was thinking that she seemed to have boasted a little too much. It wasn't easy to be the butler of the Celestial Emperor's financial management. Looking at the few baskets of TV drama script analysis that she had sorted out, and the simulated stock trading that was full of green, Lily turned her head and revealed a bright smile to Chen Guang, who was in the sky. Forget it. Since it's his money, there's no need to think too much about it. I really didn't expect that a mere mortal's business would be so complicated. It's my miscalculation. Even if I have tears in my eyes, I still have to hold on to the bragging. But no matter what, I have to keep my face in front of this brat. Now, I can use the excuse of being his substitute player to shift the blame. I'll just find a suitable opportunity to spend his money. As for whether it'll be a profit or a loss, I'll leave it to the bell of destiny. Chen Guang also ridiculed in his heart. To be honest, let's not talk about the business you've learned. Even if you watch TV dramas for another year, such as Golden Age and Golden Moon, it's still useless. Are you looking down on my business? Lioli said in a gloomy tone. There's no way to continue this conversation. She knows everything I'm thinking. Chen Guang didn't feel good at all. All right, I won't joke with you anymore. It's quite tiring to find out what you're thinking. In short, leave the celestial stairway to me. Within 12 days, I'll give you 8,000 points on the European, American, and Southeast Asian servers. As for the rest, you'll have to do it yourself. If I do it all, I'll become a substitute player, and I won't be able to stand up. After saying that, Lioli intended to disappear again. Wait, I have a question. How can you get 8,000 points on 3 servers in 12 days? That's impossible. Also, do you know how to play Dota? Only then did Chen Guang realize the loophole in Lioli's words. She abruptly turned her head and looked at him from afar with a disdainful expression. She only said coldly, I'm Jiangliuxio. In addition, I can play 3 games at the same time. F***CK. 10,000 mythological beasts galloped through Chen Guang's mind. Every time he had played against Jiangliuxio in the past, he had always been suppressed to the point where death was better than life. So it was her. This was even worse than opening a map. As soon as I had a thought in my mind, she knew it. What was the point of fighting? The old man didn't complain about his loss. In fact, when he had played against Jiangliuxio, Chen Guang had also discovered the problem. In terms of operating level, she was actually not as good as him. The gap was very small, but he could feel it. The reason why he lost to her was because of the all-knowing hook that she used. Speaking of which, her 3 games were a bit scary. Was she the legendary goddess of tentacles? Tentacles in your face. This is called Divine Hook. Do you understand Divine Hook? Divine Hook. You can do it. But you're only one person. 3 games, you don't believe it. Before he could finish speaking, Lioli, who was wearing a bikini, suddenly flashed, and 2 identical figures appeared in the same place. The 3 identical figures uniformly grinned at Chen Guang. Are you afraid of God's shadow doppelganger technique? Teach me, teach me. Every man who had to deal with several girls at the same time dreamed of this divine art. Okay, Wait until you upgrade the heavenly holy grail to 7 or 8 levels. Then this emperor will teach you depending on my mood. For now, save it. Besides, the principle of the doppelganger technique is very complicated, and it's not as easy to explain in a few words. The me in the middle is the real me, and the me on the other two sides only knows how to play games and nothing else. As Lioli spoke, the bikini on her body began to fade again. Welfare of indiscriminate triplets bikini see-through outfit? Unfortunately, Lioli didn't give him the chance. Just as he was about to see the black shadows, the three figures simultaneously disappeared. Once this matter was settled, Chen Guang's 10 days of accumulating points could be considered to have come to an end. Actually, even without Lioli taking the initiative to say it, Chen Guang himself felt that he couldn't hold on any longer. He really couldn't be a professional player. To him, this was really just a leisure activity. Even without the hellish training from back then, he really couldn't be the kind of person who only played games all day and didn't care about anything else. When he played games for too long, it became a pain for him. Fortunately, he was temporarily free from it. After getting rid of the most troublesome and boring thing, for the first time, Chen Guang felt that having Lioli around was really worry-free. Tomorrow, he would go to Teacher Zhuo's laboratory to take a look. If he didn't slow down his train of thought, he would really collapse. He decisively took out his phone and called Zhuo Jingxi. It was almost evening, but she still seemed to be busy. When she heard that he was finally willing to come over, Zhuo Jingxi was also very happy. After hanging up, she unconsciously rubbed the car key in her pocket and took out a stack of paper from the side of the laboratory table. On it was the Mercedes-Benz 400L temporary rental contract. These were the things that Zhuo Jingxi, who had been distressed for the past few days, took out the time between experiments to sort out. She had no other way. Right now, the transfer of the car would cost at least tens of thousands of yuan. She definitely couldn't let Chen Guang pay for it. She had to pay for it herself. Zhuo Jingxi really couldn't afford it, so she had no other choice. Moreover, Chen Guang might not agree to the transfer. After all, she still had to put on an act in front of her parents. If they found out that she had just bought the car, it would be a small matter if Chen Guang's boat was overturned. God knows how many more Zhou Longs would appear. Sigh. She could only try to sign this contract with him. That way, she would feel a little better. Even though she knew that he most likely wouldn't agree, she could only give it a try. Chapter 367. I definitely can't sign this contract. Teacher Zhuo, don't waste your time. I just need to remember this. There's no need to put it on paper. Sure enough, when Chen Guang arrived at the lab the next morning, he shook his head violently when he saw Zhuo Jingxi's contract. He refused to agree. Zhuo Jingxi had dragged him to the office next door to talk about this. Hearing his loud objection, she was shocked. She desperately winked at him, telling him to keep his voice down. She said, "But if you don't sign it, I'll feel bad." Chen Guang waved his hand indifferently. "What are you feeling bad about? It's not like you don't know how rich I am. This is nothing. It's nothing. Also, look at what's written in the contract. The rental fee will be calculated according to the current market price. When the car is returned, it will be compensated. The rental period is about 1 to 2 years. Zhuo Jingxi nodded blankly. Yes, is there a problem? Chen Guang grinned. Then do you know how much a Mercedes-Benz E400L costs to rent? How much? Zhuo Jingxi hadn't checked, so she wasn't sure. She just felt that she should write this in. At least 1,500. 1,500 a month? It can't be that cheap, right? Chen Guang shook his head. 1,500 a day. Zhuo Jingxi's face fell. 1,500 a day. How much would it cost to rent it for a year? She couldn't be bothered to calculate. She knew that it was an astronomical figure for her. Seeing her sad expression, Chen Guang smiled and patted her shoulder. All right, don't be like this. It's not a big deal. I really don't care about the money. It's you who insisted on keeping it in your heart. Now that I've said it out loud, you're so nervous. How can I say it out loud? But that's a car worth hundreds of thousands. Zhuo Jingxi still couldn't understand. Chen Guang smiled. You see, to you, it's a car worth hundreds of thousands. But to me, let's calculate how much money I have. Let's say it's 180 million. This car is equivalent to 4/1000ths of my wealth. Teacher Zhua, how much is your monthly salary? Zhua Jingxi nodded blankly. More than 4,000. Then, 4/1000ths of 4,000 is equal to 16. You see, to me, this car is equivalent to you spending 16 yuan on lunch. You really don't have to worry about it. Chen Guang had used the same theory to trick Zhu Jifa. Now he was using it again on Zhua Jingxi, and the effect was just as good. Sure enough, she was tricked by Chen Guang. She straightened her neck and thought for a long time. When she looked at Chen Guang again, her eyes were much clearer. That seems to be the case. Yes, that's right. Let's go to the laboratory. You drive the car first. You can decide after I graduate. You can either return it to me, or you can wait until you earn enough money to pay me back for the car. Just like you don't care if you eat $16 for lunch, I really don't care how much this car costs. Okay. Chen Guang made the final decision. Zhua Jingxi nodded and immediately threw a book to Chen Guang. Take a look at this book first. Memorize the determination methods of total nitrogen, total phosphorus, ammonia nitrogen, and CODCR. After saying that, she left in high spirits. In fact, there were some things that Zhua Jingxi did not say. These days, she did not dare to drive the car to the school and had been parked in the neighborhood. However, there were many teachers who rented in the neighborhood, and even more who had bought houses. Everyone worked in the same school. Even if they were not in the same school, they had some interaction with each other. Moreover, Zhua Jingxi was a doctoral student and was once the campus belle of Gokyo University. Not to mention anything else, just looking at her appearance, she was destined to be unable to keep a low profile. There were many single male workers in the neighborhood who would deliberately wait for her on the road from time to time, trying to please her. This was understandable, but there would always be people who could not stand it and were secretly jealous. Zhua Jingxi was not in the mood to care about what was going on in the neighborhood. She knew that there were rumors about her, but on one hand, she had to do her job as a counselor. On the other hand, it was not easy to work with her tutor on a project. She did not have that much time to listen to other people's gossip. These days, because of this Mercedes-Benz, the rumors in the neighborhood that were originally hidden in the dark suddenly rose to a new level. She had just started working for less than half a year, and she was already driving a Mercedes-Benz. Moreover, it was not an ordinary car on the side of the road, but a Mercedes-Benz E400L. How could it not be eye-catching? Some time ago, when Zhou Long came here to pester Zhua Jingxi, he was seen by others. Although Zhua Jingxi had never let him into her house, the rumors did not stop. Gradually, the people in the neighborhood began to talk about it. They said that Zhua Jingxi and the pianist Zhou Long had succeeded, and that Zhou Long had bought a car and a house for her. In the first few days, Zhua Jingxi was very distressed, but she could not explain it to others. In the past few days, she gradually let it go. Her ideals had never changed. It was up to them how they liked to gossip, and it was none of her business. It was better to guess that it was Zhou Long than to let others know that the car was a gift from Chen Guang. Right? A female counselor asked a boy in her class to give her a luxury car that cost 7 or 800,000. If this got out, it would really become big news. But even if she put this matter aside for the time being, she still felt that she owed Chen Guang. Regardless of whether she could pay him back in the future, Chen Guang had given her a car for free. In the end, she didn't give him any advantage, and he didn't even get a name. Thus, she suffered a great loss. It was also fortunate that she was a focused person, even if her heart was heavy with countless trivial thoughts. Once she entered the laboratory, she immediately went into the zone. Zhua Jingxi could be said to be extremely successful in her studies. When she was studying for her undergraduate, she was disturbed by a lot of people because of her outstanding appearance. However, she did not have any distractions and devoted herself to her studies. At the age of 17, she was admitted to Gokyo University and completed her undergraduate studies in 3 years. In the same year, she was admitted to Gokyo University's famous professor, Xu Lirong, for her master's and doctoral studies. This year 4 years had passed. At the age of 24, Zhuo Jingxi was already standing in front of the threshold of her doctoral thesis. Under Professor Shu's name, she was leading the research team to tackle the relatively new technology of photocatalytic degradation of organic phenolic compounds. Once it was completed, she would definitely take a big step forward in her academic career. Compared to Chen Guang, who was muddling along, Zhuo Jingxi was the real genius. Most people of her age were still struggling with their master's thesis. In fact, a few years earlier, she had many opportunities to go abroad, but she missed them all because of one reason or another. She did not regret it. As long as she did her research well, she could publish her doctoral thesis on CNS and successfully obtain her doctorate. She would immediately become a technical expert in the country. These things about Zhuo Jingxi were not known to the entire environmental engineering class. She also did not like to show off in front of the undergraduate students. There was no real meaning to it. This time, she had to call Chen Guang over. In her mind, it was a bit like a little girl purposely showing off in front of her little lover. After reading in the office for about 2 to 3 hours, Chen Guang made sure that he had memorized the measurement methods of the 4 indicators. He got up and walked to the laboratory next door with his book. After 3 years of undergraduate study, this was the first time he entered the school's laboratory building. Everywhere he went he felt fresh. Smelling the smell of medicine in the air, he felt that it was especially fresh. He stepped into the laboratory door. On the other side, Zhuo Jingxi was looking at the data with a frown. She was thinking hard, and then suddenly seemed to understand something. She picked up her notebook and wrote and drew. After organizing a pile of data, she let out a long sigh of relief. When she got up and turned around, she saw Chen Guang and was shocked. During the time that Zhuo Jingxi was lost in thought, Chen Guang had already roughly looked at the members of her research team. Including herself, there were a total of 4 people in the laboratory. There was 1 guy and 2 girls. They looked like graduate students and should be members of Zhuo Jingxi's research team. The 2 girls were average-looking, and the guy was tall and handsome. However, in Chen Guang's eyes, he was inferior to him. It seemed that he had heard that he was coming. This guy's eyes were not very friendly. "Love rival? You're using your head to fight with me." Before Zhuo Jingxi could speak, the guy took the initiative to speak. "You're Chen Guang, right? Hello, my name is Luo Jin. I'm also Professor Shu's graduate student. I've been doing experiments with teacher Zhuo for 2 years. You're the first undergraduate student to come to our group to join in the fun." He said hello, but the first thing he did was show off that he and Zhuo Jingxi had known each other for 2 years. Then he turned around and said that Chen Guang was here to join in the fun. He really did not come with good intentions. Chapter 368. Chen Guang thought that he had just arrived, and this was just a whim. He might not want to come in a few days, so there was no need to fall out with this guy. Luo Jin was very hostile towards Chen Guang, but Chen Guang didn't see him as an opponent at all. Although Chen Guang treated Zhuo Jingxi very well, he didn't have any other thoughts. Everyone was lustful, and he couldn't deny that it felt good to peek at Zhuo Jingxi's body. But that was it. He never thought that he would develop that kind of relationship with Zhuo Jingxi. Besides, so what if this guy had known Zhuo Jingxi for 2 years? The relationship between people couldn't be summarized by the length of time they had known each other. For example, Zhou Long and Zhuo Jingxi had known each other since they were young. But in her heart, Zhou Long was probably no different from an annoying fly. Zhuo Jingxi's mind was immersed in the experimental data, and she didn't notice Luo Jin's hostility towards Chen Guang at all. She didn't think much about it, and called the other 2 girls over to introduce them to Chen Guang. Unlike Luo Jin's hidden hostility, these 2 senior sisters were quite friendly. One of them was called Hua Ling, and her hometown was in the northeast. The other was called Zhongyu, and she was slightly prettier than Hua Ling. She was actually from the same hometown as Chen Guang. It wasn't a far-fetched story, but a senior sister from the same high school in the same county. She graduated 2 years earlier than Chen Guang, and was now in her first year of postgraduate studies. Originally, Zhuo Jingxi planned to arrange for Luo Jin, a senior in his 3rd year of postgraduate studies, to show Chen Guang around the laboratory. Since Zhong Yu and Chen Guang were from the same hometown, she might as well take the initiative to do this. Chen Guang was also happy to make such an arrangement. He didn't want to deal with Luo Jin. Luo Jin was a little unhappy, but he didn't say anything in the end. He just went to do his own things. Chen Guang, watch me do it once and familiarize yourself with the process of the experiment. Today you're here with your eyes. Watch first, understand first, and help me from time to time. It's your turn to do the experiment in 2 days. Zhong Yu said happily. She was quite happy to meet an old friend in a foreign land, and she was quite cheerful. Chen Guang nodded. Thank you for your guidance, senior sister. Zhuo Jingxi's experimental topic was neither big nor small. Using photocatalysts to catalyze the degradation of pollutants in water bodies. Similar research has been done for a long time in the world, but each person's research direction was different. Zhuo Jingxi is targeting phenolic organic compounds. Combined with the current situation of the domestic pulp and paper industry, if a suitable direction can be explored, it is bound to effectively reduce the emission of volatile phenolic pollutants and further reduce the total amount of dioxin pollutants. It was easier said than done. There are many types of photocatalysts, and the research difficulty is not small. Zhuo Jingxi spent a whole 2 years just to get started. The analysis of the catalytic decomposition effect of a single photocatalyst is her master's graduation thesis. Later, she found that the effect of the mixed type of catalyst has been improved, and the cost of water treatment has been greatly reduced. It can be further explored from the laboratory stage to industrial application. There are as many as dozens of photocatalyst materials, and some of the precious metals are extremely expensive. With her status as a doctoral student, it is impossible to maintain such a huge research project. Fortunately, her supervisor, Xu Lirong, recognized her research results and intervened in time to further expand this original master's thesis topic and declare it as a big project. Zhuo Jingxi only needs to be responsible for the exploration of the catalytic effect of the mixture of 3 materials. As a doctoral thesis, although it still seems too high-end, it is barely achievable. Even so, it is not easy. She has to constantly explore, constantly adjust the mixing ratio of the 3 materials, and then continue to explore the optimal ratio, which is the best concentration of the reaction. How many grams of photocatalyst powder is the most suitable for 1 liter of phenol wastewater? This was another huge problem. The effect of catalytic degradation was not necessarily better with more photocatalysts. In addition, if the cost was so high that it could not be applied in the industry, then the scientific research project would become a castle in the air, and there would be no way to start. In addition, it is necessary to polish the most suitable light wavelength for the photocatalytic reaction and constantly fine-tune the absorbed light wavelength to determine the catalytic effect. In short, there may be differences in the effect of ultraviolet light at 400 nanometers and ultraviolet light at 395 nanometers. When it comes to visible light and infrared light, the workload is outrageous. In addition, the concentration of phenol pollutants in the sewage also has to be deliberately explored and constantly changed from 0.001 mg/L to 100 milligrams per liter. This is the magic of photochemistry. When you can't find the most suitable point, you may not feel obvious changes, even if you constantly fine-tune the parameters. But once you think about the critical point, it is very likely that the effect of the entire reaction will change instantly. Take the boiling point of some organic solvents, for example. The temperature has not reached the boiling point. Even if the heater has been heating up, the solvent in the flask has never changed at all. It looks like it is frozen. But once the critical point is reached, the solvent quickly boils up. Studying the catalytic effect of photocatalysts is much more complicated than this principle, but the principle is the same. Zhuo Jingxi's entire research project is composed of countless random parameter changes. The ratio of different photocatalyst materials is constantly adjusted from 33 to 98, 1. The quality of the catalyst material is constantly changing, from 1 milligram to several grams per liter of sewage. The pollution concentration of phenol wastewater is from low concentration to medium concentration to high concentration. The absorbed light wavelength is changed from infrared to ultraviolet, and the wavelength changes are nanometers by nanometers. The difficulty is no less than Edison trying more than 6,000 materials to invent the light bulb. Modern scientific research, especially this kind of scientific research close to the basic disciplines, has always been so boring. Only under the premise of constantly accumulating a large amount of data can one approach the essence of science step by step. Even if you know that you are facing tens of thousands of possibilities, you can only climb forward step by step like Prometheus. Professor Xu now leads nearly 10 doctoral students. In addition to Zhuo Jingxi, a total of 5 doctoral students lead 4 other teams, each tackling the catalytic effect of different catalyst materials. Zhuo Jingxi has been trapped in this project since she started her PhD. During this period, she has experienced several major setbacks. For example, in the beginning, she had chosen nanoiron dioxide, zinc dioxide, and silicon dioxide as the entry point, and had chosen platinum as the coordination chelation material. However, after a year of suffering and accumulating a large amount of data, she suddenly had the idea to change the silicon dioxide to strontium titanate. Now the effect was better than all the previous 3 materials, and she had to start all over again. In fact, she does not really expect herself to be able to determine all the parameters and find the most perfect point. This is unrealistic. But this does not matter. Even if her entire project is a complete failure, as long as she can sort out a large amount of her own data, make a data curve, and submit it to international scientific journals, she can also obtain a large SCI impact factor. Even if it is a failed research, it is equivalent to eliminating the possibility of failure for others. It is still a scientific research result and can also be completed as a doctoral thesis. If there is really someone in the world who can try all photocatalysts, find the most perfect ratio from dozens of materials, and then determine the reaction concentration of phenolic wastewater, absorbed light wavelength, reaction time, and other parameters, and find the reaction conditions that can break the chain of phenolic organic compounds at the lowest cost and the highest efficiency, it would not be too much to give a Nobel Prize. But obviously, this is not something that can be achieved overnight. In the process of research, luck is off the charts, or rather more manpower and material resources. After dozens of teams work together and constantly fine-tune the parameters, they can generally find a direction that can be applied on an industrial scale. Then they can almost produce a product. Perhaps it is still far from perfect, but this half-baked product can also be taken out to make a mixed liquid photocatalyst fluid and sold on the market. What awaits the project team will be amazing profits, and at the same time, it can open up the difficult situation of phenolic pollutants in the country. The scope that Chen Guang can participate in now is a little further. In the corner of the huge laboratory, there is a set of biochemical treatment simulator. In this simulator, it can generally reflect the biodegradability of phenolic pollutants after the chain is broken. This is the smallest point in the scope of industrial application. This is actually Zhuo Jingxi's worst-case scenario. If she really can't make a breakthrough in the general direction, then she will start from a small point and specifically implement the process of microbial biochemical reactions. Phenolic pollutants have an inhibitory effect on the activity of the core factors in biochemical treatment. After part of the chain is broken, the activity of the microorganisms can be increased, and the biochemical treatment effect can be further improved. The exploration of this matter is almost enough to write a paper. This was how basic scientific research was like. A big topic could be written from different perspectives. As long as it had something to say, it could prove something or disprove something, and it could be considered a scientific achievement. As long as your paper can be published in a journal and recognized, it is considered that you have a certain academic influence in the discipline. Neither Xu Lirong nor Zhuo Jingxi expected to really complete this great research. However, in the process of research, Zhuo Jingxi alone has published more than 10 papers in foreign journals, an average of 1 every 2 months. The doctoral leaders of the other 4 groups are not much worse than Zhuo Jingxi. In addition, the Photocatalyst Environmental Protection Application Laboratory of Gokyo University, which is composed of 5 groups, passed the selection and became one of the only 3 national key laboratories of Gokyo University. As for whether the real product can be produced, no one has much hope. Even the internationally renowned large scientific research institutions have invested a lot of manpower and material resources in the past few years. In April 2015, Tokyo University announced that they have really explored a usable photocatalyst water purification technology, but it is still a long way from widespread application. The reason why the country supports this laboratory is also very simple. Professor Xu Lirong, the discipline leader, is currently working here. Professor Xu has gone further than others in this research, and there is hope for the level of scientific research to catch up with the international advanced level. Industrial application may be 10 years later, but if they don't do it now, they will never catch up with foreign countries. This is something that they know is impossible, but they have to do it. This is the norm of modern scientific research. It is precisely because there are thousands of people quietly doing this kind of thankless work that human science and technology can continue to advance. The advancement of basic scientific research is particularly difficult, but once there is a substantial result, it can really take a big step forward. Taking Edison as an example, before the discovery that tungsten filament can be used to make incandescent lamps, most people in the world had to live in darkness at night. However, with the birth of incandescent lamps, in just a few years, thousands of households were illuminated. Some people rose to the sky in a single step in difficult exploration. But one success is built on the bones of thousands of people. More people spend their lives in obscurity. Under Zheng Yu's constant help and introduction, Chen Guang spent 5 days to measure the ammonia nitrogen, total phosphorus, total nitrogen, and CODCR of the wastewater before and after the biochemical treatment. At the same time, he also gained a deeper understanding of how terrifying Zhuo Jingxi's actions were. He couldn't help but be in awe. Chapter 369. Chen Guang admired Zhuo Jingxi. In fact, Zhuo Jingxi was also secretly observing Chen Guang during the experiment. It had to be said that the first time he did an experiment, Zhuo Jingxi's eyes lit up. The reason was simple. Zhuo Jingxi had been doing experiments for more than 4 years and was extremely familiar with the operation of various instruments. However, Chen Guang showed a different side in his first attempt. His hands were really too steady and fast. The experiment to determine the concentration of ammonia nitrogen and total phosphorus was not very technical. In actual operation, it was just holding a pipette gun and constantly moving the constant temperature heater and water bath pot. The main work involved the addition of sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, and other chemicals. During the experiment, the chemicals were added in test tubes one after another. A fast person might only need 30 seconds to drip 10 times of sulfuric acid, but a slow person's hands kept shaking and might not even be able to finish in 5 minutes. Just this small detail could open up a gap of 4.5 minutes. When magnified to the entire experiment process, the difference was terrifying. However, this was not what made Chen Guang special. He was obviously only an undergraduate student, but his thinking was extremely clear. At first, he was still blind and only knew how to move the solvents and use a spectrophotometer to measure the absorbance. After watching Zheng Yu do it once, he could calculate the standard curve himself. That was not all. On the 6th day, when he finished the experiment and got off work, he packed his things in the office and prepared to go home. Chen Guang took the initiative to find her and asked her why the biochemical simulator, which consisted of an anaerobic tank and 2 aerobic pools, was designed this way, and why the ratio of different pool sizes was different. He also asked why the parameters, such as residence time and pH value, were adjusted this way. When he asked her why the anaerobic tank and the 2 aerobic pools had a pollutant removal rate of 80%, 55%, and 35% respectively, Zhuo Jingxi was completely stunned. Zhuo Jingxi was stunned for a long time. Her brain, which had been numb from all the experiments, finally came back to her senses. She looked at him quietly. I've seen your academic results for the past few years. Although you didn't fail many subjects, you didn't get more than 90 marks in any of them. I thought you didn't like studying, so I wanted to bring you to the lab to experience the atmosphere. Only now do I feel that you've really wasted your brain. She was a little angry as she said that. She stretched out her fair finger and poked Chen Guang's forehead. My heart aches for you. You're so smart. Why don't you spend some time learning? Chen Guang scratched his head in embarrassment. You can't blame me. The atmosphere in our dormitory is like that. In the beginning, everyone applied for this major because environmental protection was a new industry and it would be easier to find a job in the future. But most of the seniors who graduated early went to work for companies to write fake postgraduate studies or environmental impact assessments. Or if they had a better footing, they would take the civil service exam. But the other 50% of them had changed careers. They feel that there's no future in their major, and they can't be serious even if they want to. They all think that they'll change careers in the future anyway. As Chen Guang said that, Zhuo Jingxi also sighed. He was not talking nonsense. Gokyo University was already one of the first universities in the country to set up an undergraduate major in environmental science. It could barely be considered as an academic pioneer among the universities in the country. But after the undergraduate students graduated, other than those who went on to do postgraduate studies, the number of people who actually continued to work in the environmental protection industry was really less than 50%. Zhuo Jingxi said unwillingly. But that's the situation of others. With your brain, if you put in a little effort, it won't be a problem for you to get into postgraduate studies. Even if you can't stay in school after you graduate, it'll be enough for you to work as a project staff in some research institute. Chen Guang shrugged. I'm lazy. I've been staying in the laboratory recently. Seeing that you guys are so serious and busy, I can't help but think about some things. In fact, he didn't finish his sentence, but Zhuo Jingxi understood. She suddenly realized that the person standing in front of her was a man with a net worth of almost 200 million yuan. It seemed unrealistic to ask him to be a research worker. She felt unwilling, but then she thought about how poor she was now. She was in no position to scold him. After a while she said, Forget it, I won't talk about you anymore. Seeing that you've been so serious these past few days, I'll treat you to a meal? Okay. Chen Guang agreed. The two of them packed up for a while and walked out side by side. They saw Luo Jin standing outside with a book in his arms. It seemed like he did not expect Chen Guang to walk out side by side with Zhuo Jingxi. He was caught off guard by the scene. Luo Jin, what's the matter? Zhuo Jingxi asked. Luo Jin hesitated for a while, then pinched his nose and placed the book in front of Zhuo Jingxi. Teacher Zhuo, I've been reading a case recently. I want to ask your opinion on this kind of high-concentration wastewater with excessive sulfate ions. Before he could finish, Zhuo Jingxi did not take his book. I have something to do today, so I have to leave first. You can ask me tomorrow. I'm sorry. Luo Jin did not expect her to reject him so easily. He was stunned for a while before he nodded helplessly. Okay. The two of them went downstairs. Chen Guang said with a smile. He wants to treat you to a meal. In front of Chen Guang, Zhuo Jingxi did not lie and replied, I know. That's why I stopped him from talking. Luo Jin is a graduate student who was forced to come here. His brain is quite stiff when it comes to academics, but he is very thoughtful in other aspects. What do you mean? Previously, he found all kinds of reasons to treat me to a meal several times. At that time, I did not think too much about it. I thought he really wanted to ask me some questions, but guess what I saw? Can you not keep me guessing? A candlelight dinner makes me sick. I'm so busy. Isn't this a waste of my time? Hearing those words, Chen Guang nearly burst out laughing. How bold was that brother of his? He must have watched too many dramas and thought that a candlelight dinner could move a woman. The two of them sat in a small restaurant outside the school and watched her eat like she was fighting a war. She was probably busy going back to organize the data after the meal. Chen Guang said, Teacher Zhua, you can eat slower. Why didn't I notice this before? I still remember when you first came to be our counselor. You were so delicate. We all thought you relied on your face to make a living. Zhuo Jingxi's mouth was full of food. She said with a whimper. Uffed. I'm used to it. I can't slow down. Actually, I really admire you. Photocatalysts. I can't even count the permutations in my mind, and I'm about to collapse. I don't know how you survived. I always feel that you may have worked for 10 years for nothing. Zhuo Jingxi heard him talk about professional things and became interested. She put down her bowl and chopsticks and took a big gulp of water. That's true, but you have to think about it this way. If someone could really find a suitable ratio and chelate method for dozens of photocatalysts, such as silica, platinum, rhodium, palladium, and other photocatalysts, then determine all the reaction parameters, make a finished product, and use this kind of recyclable catalytic reaction material to remove more than 90% of the refractory phenolic pollutants. How much help would that be to mankind? Without waiting for Chen Guang to speak, she became excited again. It's not just phenolic pollutants. There are also lipids, and even conventional CODCR, or nitrogen and phosphorus. There are also dioxins that are more difficult to deal with. These things can be dealt with using the strong oxidation of the photocatalysis environment. Once you figure it out, think about it. Put a photocatalyst grid in a very polluted river, and when visible light shines on it, it can catalyze and degrade pollutants. These things that harm future generations can be turned into carbon dioxide, into non-toxic and harmless organic substances for the benefit of future generations. How great of an achievement would that be? Chen Guang was stunned. I understand the logic, but it's too difficult. I've checked on the internet. At present, most of the people doing this in China are just hype. But you can't deny that it can really be done. Zhuo Jingxi was not convinced. We are a national key laboratory. I've already written more than 10 papers published in SCI journals. This is not hype. This is knowledge. Okay, you're right. Knowledge, it's knowledge. Chen Guang did not intend to argue with her. No matter how good the prospects she said were, it was really too difficult. Strictly speaking, just the ratio of dozens of materials, the ratio of coordination and chelation of precious metals, and finding the optimal reaction concentration, the possibilities were simply infinitely large. What was even more frightening was that after you found a seemingly perfect ratio, through continuous elimination, your perfect ratio would inexplicably be destroyed again when you changed the lighting conditions. This was simply a bottomless pit. Chen Guang thought to himself as he looked at the familiar figure flashing by the window outside the small shop. Although he did not really agree with Zhuo Jingxi's philosophy, she was indeed worthy of respect. Maybe I really will be stuck in this for the rest of my life, but I have no regrets. Even if it's to help others with elimination, at least I've become a brick in the building of science. Don't you think so? Chen Guang sent Zhuo Jingxi to the entrance of the neighborhood. When the two separated, Zhuo Jingxi said this. Chen Guang nodded. If you really are stuck in it for the rest of your life, I see that you have no plans to find someone to marry. You're too poor to feed yourself. I'll support you. F*CKU. I'm still hoping that you can really do it. I feel that this is quite profitable. If you can make it into a unique product and sell it, the costs will be tens of thousands of yuan. A complete set of equipment can easily be sold for tens of millions. As long as the effect is good, there will be customers. Taking care of you is my investment. Dream on. I'm in Teacher Shu's laboratory. All the results belong to the laboratory. How can I let you sell them for money? Not long after separating from Zhuo Jingxi, Chen Guang was stopped by Luo Jin. I knew you would come to me. Just say what you want to say. Chen Guang crossed his hands and looked at the angry bull-like senior with an indifferent face. He thought to himself, what a poor guy. Stay away from Teacher Zhua. Luo Jin opened his mouth and said. Chen Guang almost laughed out loud. He did not have much contact with Luo Jin these past few days. Although he felt that his hostility was always there, he kept it to himself in the laboratory. Today he had dinner with Zhuo Jingxi, and this guy could not hold it in anymore. He thought that he had some level of understanding, but how could he be so impulsive when he opened his mouth? Recalling that he actually invited Zhuo Jingxi to a candlelit dinner, Chen Guang vaguely felt that Luo Jin's nerve circuit could not be a straight line, right? Chapter 370. In a sense, Luo Jin was really a talent. Reason? Chen Guang was still clasping his hands, smiling without saying anything. The first time they met, this person tried to intimidate him. He didn't pay attention to him at that time, but now he was doing it again. Luo Jin was stunned. He thought that Chen Guang would run away, but he didn't expect to be questioned instead. Obviously, he didn't know what to say next. In fact, Luo Jin had heard about Chen Guang before. Wang Ren was a celebrity in the college, and he was in charge of everything. Although most of his power was concentrated in the undergraduates, many postgraduates and doctoral students in the college had been undergraduates, so there was a lot to say about Wang Ren. For example, postgraduates like Luo Jin, Hua Ling, and Zhong Yu didn't need to deal with Wang Ren, but they all thought that he would continue to dominate the college until the end of time. But suddenly one day, he disappeared from Jinhuan Academy. After asking around a little, he found out that he had been brought down by someone, and this was done by an undergraduate student. There was a lot of gossip involved, and there were many other teachers who witnessed it in the conference room. So the people in the engineering class didn't deliberately hide it. Thus, Chen Guang's reputation rose along with it. If it was just an ordinary undergraduate student following Zhuo Jingxi to the lab, Luo Jin wouldn't think too much about it. But Chen Guang was an influential person in the college. Seeing the two of them walking out of the office together, Luo Jin couldn't help but make wild guesses. For some strange reason, he had quietly followed the two of them out of the school. Then, he saw the two of them eating together, and their attitudes were exceptionally intimate. He thought about the few times he had invited teacher Zhuo to eat. She had either politely rejected him, or found an excuse to leave after 2 bites of food. At this moment, Luo Jin finally couldn't sit still anymore. This was the reason why he jumped out to obstruct Chen Guang's path. But now that Chen Guang asked him about it, what was the reason? You're still an undergraduate. You should focus on your studies. This is a national key laboratory. You'll only be a hindrance. Luo Jin thought for a long time, and finally found a suitable excuse. Hearing those words, Chen Guang's smile grew even more radiant. This fellow was clearly here to cause trouble, but he's so innocent that it's hard to hate him. Senior, why don't you think of a more reliable explanation? I've been in the laboratory for a few days now, so which eye of yours saw that I'm more of a hindrance to you? Zhong Yu was supposed to be busy with the ammonia nitrogen and total phosphorus testing, but I helped her do it today. She was also freed to help teacher Zhuo with the photocatalyst pretreatment. That's not a hindrance, right? Luo Jin wasn't Chen Guang's opponent when it came to bickering with words. It was also because Chen Guang didn't want to ruin Zhuo Jingxi's reputation. Otherwise, he could just reveal the matter of the Mercedes-Benz E400L, and a brat like Luo Jin would be sent flying. He felt wronged. When he was a graduate student, he was working with another PhD student. Later, he met Zhuo Jingxi at a meeting, and fell in love at first sight with this beautiful PhD student, who was the same age as him. He felt extremely wronged. When he had just been admitted as a postgraduate student, he was originally working with another PhD student. Later, he happened to see Zhuo Jingxi at a meeting, and fell in love at first sight with this beautiful PhD student, who was the same age as him. Even if he did not hesitate to offend others, he had to beg his grandfather and grandmother to switch to Zhuo Jingxi's project team. 2 years had passed, and he had indeed changed from a fresh and hot graduate student to a barely qualified research dog. He could help Zhuo Jingxi with the experiment, but she kept her distance from him. Luo Jin also understood. His family was average, and his academic ability was not as good as Zhuo Jingxi's. His academic qualifications were also lower than hers, but he always wanted to move her with his true feelings. He thought that a strong research woman like her would always need a gentle and considerate man to care for her. Of course, he was the best choice. He persisted until now, until Chen Guang, the fresher and hotter undergraduate student, suddenly appeared in the laboratory. Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi would accidentally reveal their intimate attitudes from time to time, making the stubborn Luo Jin unable to eat or sleep in peace. He didn't think too much about it, but now he realized that he couldn't win against the other party. Alright, don't look so sad. You were the one who came to pick a fight, but you make it seem like I'm bullying you. Let's go our separate ways. I'm only in the mood to come to the laboratory for a while. When school starts next semester, you won't be able to see me even if you want to. Chen Guang finished speaking and left. After a few words today, he had seen through Luo Jin. Zhuo Jingxi was right. His thinking was rigid and somewhat self-righteous. If he really was a genius student, he could be of great help to Zhuo Jingxi in scientific research, and maybe Chen Guang would be a little more vigilant. But with his current appearance, he could at most be a research laborer if he worked hard for the rest of his life. He would be slightly higher than a research dog, but the gap between him and Zhuo Jingxi would only get bigger and bigger. Zhuo Jingxi was a person who put her heart and soul into learning, so there was no way she would waste her time on someone like that. She still allowed him to stay on the project team, because he was a simple-minded person, and it was convenient to use him in experiments. Seeing Chen Guang walk away without looking back, Luo Jin's face turned green and white. In the end, he could only pinch his nose and go back dejectedly. The next day, Chen Guang arrived at the laboratory a little late. When he entered the door, he saw that the laboratory was covered with dark clouds, and everyone had worried expressions. What's wrong? Chen Guang walked up and asked. Luo Jin looked at him and didn't answer. Zhuo Jingxi frowned and sat on the chair thinking about something. She didn't seem to notice that Chen Guang had come. Zhongyu explained, "Our atomic spectrometer is malfunctioning. It will take at least 3 to 4 days for the maintenance to come. The malfunction is quite serious, and we don't know how long it will take to fix it." Chen Guang wondered, "Can we borrow it from the lab next door?" Zhongyu shook her head. "Not our team. The imported one used by the entire lab is broken, and we can't borrow it. The domestic ones aren't accurate, and the data produced isn't accurate." On the other side, Zhuo Jingxi thought for a while, and suddenly took out her phone to make a call. After Zhuo Jingxi left the room, Luo Jin suddenly said, "Chen Guang, go do your own thing. The spectrometer has nothing to do with your experiment, so don't stand here and cause trouble." "Brother Luo, why are you talking like that?" Hua Ling, who was next to him, argued. Chen Guang looked at this northeastern senior. He didn't expect her to have such a strong sense of justice. Zhongyu also looked at Luo Jin unhappily. Obviously, this senior who came for Zhuo Jingxi didn't get the respect of Hua Ling and Zhongyu. Luo Jin's face darkened. "What did I say? He has never used an atomic spectrometer before. He's just an undergraduate. Did I say something wrong?" Chapter 371. So what if we're undergraduates? Who didn't start as undergraduates? Even if we don't know how to use it now, won't we learn it after reading the manual? Zhongyu also started arguing with Luo Jin. She really could not stand this simple-minded senior. In the past, they only interacted with each other in experiments. His overly simple-minded personality could be of some help when dealing with data, but now with the addition of Chen Guang, he had completely become a troublemaker. It was said that one should help one's relatives but not reason. Chen Guang and Zhongyu had graduated from the same high school. Even if they had only known each other for a short time, their relationship was much closer. Moreover, Luo Jin was not in the right. Luo Jin was stunned. He did not expect that in just a few days, he would become the outcast. He snorted and took out a book from the drawer beside him, slamming it on the table. "Fine. You said he will learn it after reading the manual. Fine, take a look. Can you understand it?" Luo Jin's last sentence was directed at Chen Guang. The three of them turned to look at the book on the table. The manual for the imported equipment was, of course, in English. Zhongyu was quick-witted and immediately realized that Luo Jin was purposely making things difficult for Chen Guang. "I'll translate for him." Reading the manual with a translator? Are you here to do experiments or to be a big boss? Luo Jin finally got cocky. Chen Guang had a crooked smile on his face. It seemed that his reputation in the school was not big enough. These people only knew that he had chased Wang Ren away, but they did not know how the feud between him and Wang Ren came about. If he knew a thing or two, he would not have dared to talk about it in front of him. It was all in English. How could he do that? You said I can't understand it? Chen Guang waved his hand, indicating that Zhong Yu did not need to worry. He grabbed the manual and began to read it. He read the first 2 sentences in English, and it was the old-fashioned way. His pronunciation was perfect, and his pronunciation was clear. He read it as soon as he picked it up, unlike the other students who had to ponder over it for a while. Luo Jin and the other 2 had yet to recover from their shock when Chen Guang suddenly switched to Mandarin. This was even more frightening. His eyes were looking at the English version, but his mouth was able to speak Chinese without any hindrance. He spoke extremely fast and did not stutter. He did not even use his brain at all. Simultaneous translation was nothing more than this. There were some self-taught undergraduates who were particularly interested in English, but unless they were really English majors or language geniuses, under normal circumstances, how could an undergraduate be so fluent in English? Even a doctor like Zhuo Jingxi was far from being able to do this. Zhong Yu smiled until her eyes squinted. Chen Guang really didn't embarrass the people of Lilai County. Luo Jin did not make a sound. He did not want to admit that he was actually very jealous of Chen Guang. His English was not very good, and every time he read foreign language literature and the operating manuals of imported equipment, it would be very painful. Therefore, he deliberately wanted to use this matter to mock Chen Guang. He did not expect to hit his head on the wall. At this time, Zhuo Jingxi walked in from outside and saw that Chen Guang was reading the manual. She already knew that Chen Guang's English was very good, so she did not bother to ask more. The haze on her face eased a little. Just now Professor Xu helped to contact the school. He said that the School of Chemical Engineering has an analyzer that is temporarily vacant. I can borrow it. Although it is a little troublesome to take the samples and run to and fro, it will be over after a few days. Then, she asked Luo Jin and Zhong Yu to communicate with the School of Chemical Engineering. Professor Xu had already contacted them, so temporarily borrowing the vacant equipment was not a big deal. Brother Luo, you don't have to be so hostile to Chen Guang. I think he is very good. Downstairs, Zhong Yu could not help but say this. Luo Jin was not happy. Zhong Yu, what do you mean? I know that you and he are from the same hometown, but you can't think that I am making things difficult just because you have a good relationship with him, right? What did I say wrong? What's wrong? Chen Guang has helped me a lot. He stood there without moving, and you say that he is causing trouble? Also, why do you look down on him just because he is an undergraduate? You can't just read the manual, can you? Luo Jin turned his head away and did not dare to look at the aggressive Zhong Yu. I just thought that the average undergraduate is like that. How would I know that his English is so good? Anyway, I am not looking down on him. He was determined to act shamelessly, and Zhong Yu could not do anything about it. She knew that it was useless to say anything, so she could only sigh. In the laboratory, Chen Guang finally had the opportunity to follow Zhuo Jingxi to learn about photocatalysts. Zhuo Jingxi taught him from the bottom of her heart, but Chen Guang only listened for a while before he felt dizzy. It was not his fault that he did not have enough brain power. It was purely because he did not learn a lot of knowledge at the undergraduate level. For example, chelation reaction. He knew every word, and he could read the words that were combined together. He could also understand what this thing was about by searching it on the encyclopedia. However, when it came to the specific formation process of chelation, the formation of electron coordination bonds, and the principle of atomic stress, he was at a loss. To be more specific, to understand the principle of photochemical reactions, he also had to understand the principle of enthalpy and entropy changes. It was tragic to say that the preliminary study of these theories was in the course of physical chemistry. As a generation of last-minute grinding king, who did not even go to the exam, and was still studying courseware, Chen Guang felt that the formulas that he barely remembered were still miles away from practical application. Chen Guang was in so much pain that he wanted to die, but Zhuo Jingxi was talking excitedly. She really enjoyed this feeling. Facing him as a counselor, wanting to be his teacher was basically a failure. She could not bring out the dignity of a teacher at all. Fortunately, I am still a good researcher. Looking at his worshipful eyes, I feel really satisfied. If Chen Guang knew what Zhuo Jingxi was thinking at this moment, he might want to poke his eyes with his fingers. Teacher Zhuo, this look of mine is called worship? Can't you see that behind my sparkling eyes, there is a capital letter of confusion? Teacher Zhuo, can you let me go to the toilet? Chen Guang could not hold it in anymore. It was not that he could not hold it in and wanted to go to the toilet, but his head was about to explode from Zhuo Jingxi's bombardment. He only felt that the sky above his head was filled with complex formulas that he had never seen or heard of before. Her eloquent manner looked like she was teaching someone, but in reality, she was talking to herself. Chen Guang was dumbfounded, and Hua Ling, who was next to him, was barely able to hear it. However, Zhuo Jingxi herself did not notice it at all. People who were obsessed with scientific research would often be in this state. It seemed like they were discussing with someone else, but in fact their brain had already started to spin quickly, and it was basically the same as talking to themselves. After strolling outside for a few minutes, Chen Guang estimated that Zhuo Jingxi had already gotten over it. He dared to walk back, and saw that Zhuo Jingxi had already started to look at the samples with her head down. He let out a long sigh of relief. Going to the toilet was really useful. However, just as he sat down, Zhuo Jingxi suddenly turned around and saw him. She smiled and said, "You're finally back. Where was I?" F***CK. Again. Chen Guang hurriedly waved his hand. Teacher Zhuo, you can continue with the experiment first. No rush, no rush. We have to wait for the atomic spectrometer to be finalized before we can do the next step. Right now we're just doing some preparatory work. Listen to me. Each different nanoscale catalyst material has different properties. After we mix these things together, who can save me? Chen Guang really wanted to find a piece of tape to cover her mouth. Teacher Zhuo, I know the principles you're talking about are very powerful, but I really don't understand. At this moment, Luo Jin walked in from outside the laboratory. Zhuo Jingxi saw this and quickly left Chen Guang behind and walked to the door. Luo Jin, did you guys ask? What did the Faculty of Chemical Engineering say? Did you get the lab key? Although Chen Guang did not really like this second-year student, at this moment, Chen Guang basically regarded him as his savior. When he heard Zhuo Jingxi's question, Luo Jin opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he hesitated. Behind him, Zhong Yu also walked in with tears on her face. Teacher Zhuo, the head of the Faculty of Chemical Engineering, he. Chapter 372. Wang Run was sitting in his office with a smug smile on his face. He had indeed left the Jianhuan Academy with his tail between his legs. But his situation did not become worse because of this. His old uncle did not listen to him and gave him a good job. The head of the Laboratory Equipment Management Department of the School of Chemical Engineering. There were policies from above, and there were countermeasures from below. Although the leaders of Jianhuan School and even Wang Ren's uncle did not want to have a bad relationship with Wu Shan, but we can't afford to offend you, so we avoided you. Since we know that this student has some relationship with you, we will move to another place and no longer appear in front of you. This result can be considered as an explanation to everyone, right? These things were nothing more than giving each other a way out and saving each other's face. Of course, Wang Ren's uncle was the vice principal of Gokyo University. His administrative rank was the same as Wu Shan's, so he had students all over the world. After inquiring a bit more, in the eyes of the vice principal, Wu Shan and that kid from the Building Ring Academy only had a slight relationship with Wu Tong. They were just friends between juniors, and Wu Shan had only helped him with a small matter. If they really wanted to fight to the death, he believed that Wu Shan did not think that it was necessary. They still had to give each other some face. Since Wu Shan did not pursue the matter after that day, the school naturally followed the vice principal's decision to deal with Wang Ren from the east to the west. The School of Chemical Engineering was one of the larger schools in Gokyo University. As the name implied, the experimental projects of this school had always been the most important. It had the largest laboratory building in Gokyo University, and the total investment of the experimental equipment was more than 100 million. Wang Ren's job was a high-end one. He was responsible for the daily maintenance of many of the experimental equipment in the chemical engineering building. If there was a need to buy new equipment, he could also help. This was a lucrative job, and it was very easy. Although it was a maintenance job, what he had to do was to call the manufacturer when the equipment broke down and ask the manufacturer to repair it. Compared to when he was in Jianhuan school, his income did not decrease. In these 2 to 3 months, his income had increased several times. He was also regretting it. If he had known that there would be such an easy job to earn money, he wouldn't have bothered staying in the academic affairs office of Jianhuan Academy and working himself to death to do all those things. Not only did he not get much money from the undergraduate students, but he also ended up with a bad reputation, and there was also the risk that he would be exposed at any time. It was much easier now. He picked up the teacup, took a sip, leaned back on the rocking chair and sighed. Alas, everything is good here, but I don't have the opportunity to contact little girls. The chemical engineering faculty is full of monks, the girls who can study in this broken school. Alas, Wang Ren wasn't talking nonsense. It wasn't that there weren't any beauties in the chemical engineering department, but the ratio was too low, especially the female straight-A students. To put it bluntly, their looks were basically below average. For Wang Ren, who was used to young and beautiful girls, it was like heaven and earth. The Jianhuan College is still better. Even though the graduate student who just came is far from Sun Xiaoxuan, who is in Chen Guang's class, he is still not bad. It's been a few months since I've seen a girl that I like. I should lower my standards appropriately. Wang Ren sighed again. Thinking of the comfortable days in the past, he still felt a little regretful. But it didn't matter. The people from the Construction Ring Academy deserved to be unlucky. Didn't they just walk right into a trap? A little earlier, the head of the chemistry department asked him to help arrange the equipment for a research group in the Construction Ring Academy. At that time, he was already unhappy. He was someone who left that place with his tail between his legs. How could he be nice when he saw them? Don't blame me for being rude. In fact, he didn't really expect to get anyone because of this small matter. It was just that he couldn't hold back the anger in his heart when he met a student from the Construction Ring Academy. When the people from the research group came back to the leader of the chemical engineering faculty, he would let them go. But at this time, Wang Ren still didn't know that he was going to be in big trouble. He was still immersed in the pleasure of revenge. Sister Zhongyu, what did Wang Ren say to you just now? Chen Guang walked forward in big strides as he turned around and asked Zhongyu. Zhuo Jingxi, who was next to him, was desperately pulling him. Chen Guang, don't go. Can you listen to me for once? The last thing is over. At worst, I won't borrow the equipment from the chemical engineering department. Don't be impulsive. Zhongyu was also pulling Chen Guang on the other side. At this time, the tears on her face had already dried up. Chen Guang, calm down. I really didn't suffer any losses. It's just that some of Wang's words were too harsh. I suddenly lost control of my emotions. Hua Ling, who was a bit bigger, was pulling the back of Chen Guang's collar. She really didn't let go of any blind spots. Luo Jin looked at Chen Guang from the side. He was also hesitating whether to pull him or not. In his heart, he was looking forward to Chen Guang causing trouble in the School of Chemical Engineering and getting expelled. At the same time, he felt that his performance in the School of Chemical Engineering was too cowardly. If he pulled Chen Guang over now, wouldn't that make him seem unmanly? About 2 minutes ago, Zhongyu didn't say anything more. She only told everyone that the director of the chemical engineering faculty was Wang Ren. Then Chen Guang exploded and silently walked out of the laboratory. Zhuo Jingxi had seen him explode. God knows what kind of trouble he would cause if he left. Zhongyu saw that the situation was not good and hurriedly tried to persuade him. The moment she spoke, the face of Chen Guang, who had always been kind in the laboratory, suddenly became gloomy and ugly. Chen Guang was pulled by the 3 girls and couldn't move. He had no choice but to stop and look back at Zhuo Jingxi. Teacher Zhua, did you forget what Wang wanted to do to you? After that, without waiting for Zhuo Jingxi to speak, Chen Guang turned to look at Zhongyu. Sister Zhongyu, tell me the truth. Was it really just his words that were too harsh? What did he say? Chen Guang's eyes were so burning that Zhongyu subconsciously let go of his hand. She didn't dare to look at him directly. She turned her head away and thought of the grievances just now. She wanted to find someone to talk to, but she felt that something was wrong. Chen Guang said again, "Speak. You must speak today." He said that I looked pretty good and asked if I was interested in paying him 20,000 a month to be his mistress. I didn't agree, so he reached out to touch my face. I dodged and ran away. Finally, Zhongyu told the truth. I knew it. He can't change his bad habits. Chen Guang suddenly became angry. He pointed at Luo Jin and scolded. Luo Jin, are you a man? Your classmate was humiliated like this, and you just stood there and watched? Luo Jin blushed and wanted to argue. He thought to himself, what does this have to do with me? Zhongyu didn't treat me well before, so why should I stand up for her? Moreover, that was Wang Run. No, it's not Luo Jin's fault. At that time, Wang Run didn't let him into the office. I went in alone. Zhongyu defended Luo Jin. Without giving Luo Jin a chance to speak, Chen Guang said angrily, when you saw that bastard Wang Run, you should know what kind of person he is. Borrowing equipment is such an open and above-board thing. Why did he let you, a girl, stay in his office? Moreover, you ran out of Wang Ren's office crying, but he didn't even dare to fart. What kind of joke is this? Chapter 373. Luo Jin was extremely embarrassed by Chen Guang's words. A man needed face, and a tree needed its bark. Being lectured like this by an undergraduate student in his eyes, he felt embarrassed. Chen Guang, don't just stand there and talk. Who didn't know that Wang Run had a powerful background? What can I do even if I rush in and question him? If things really got out of hand, what if Teacher Zhuo couldn't borrow the lab equipment? You'll bear the consequences of delaying the progress of the experiment? Can you? How capable? Don't pretend to be angry here. What's the point of being angry at me? I don't believe you can do anything to Wang Run. Chen Guang suddenly laughed. You're saying that I'm pretending to be angry? Fine, come. I'll show you what a man is. Zhuo Jingxi panicked and suddenly hugged Chen Guang from behind. Almost half of her body was pressed against Chen Guang's back. She turned her head and shouted at Luo Jin. Luo Jin, what nonsense are you talking about? Why are you provoking him at this time? Luo Jin didn't know how powerful Chen Guang was, but Zhuo Jingxi knew. Don't be fooled by his usual jovial demeanor. Once he got serious, he didn't care about anything. When Wang Ren was still the head of the discipline department in the Jianhuan school, and was now in charge of Chen Guang, he dared to go against others, and even almost beat them up. It was only when Wang Run was chased out of the school that things came to an end. Now that something like this had happened, Zhuo Jingxi felt that things were really getting out of hand. How could she let him go? Chen Guang tried to take 2 steps, but he really couldn't move. He didn't dare to use force to break free from Zhuo Jingxi, so he could only stop and sigh. Teacher Zhuo, do you really think I've lost my mind from anger? Zhuo Jingxi retorted, isn't it? Chen Guang shook his head. No. Actually, I'm very clear-headed now. Really clear-headed. Then why are you still like this? Zhongyu asked again. Chen Guang sighed. Fine, I'll tell you why I'm so angry. On a larger scale, look at where we are. This is Gokyo University. It was 211,985. It was the best university in the southwest region. It was the yearning of countless students in the Dechuan province. He, Wang Ren, was merely an ignorant and incompetent piece of trash. What right did he have to wield authority here? What he did in the past at the Jianhuan Academy was fine. I thought that if I chased him away, it would be retribution for his evil deeds. And I thought that he would regret it. But look at how the people in the school fooled us. He is a completely uncultured person, but he controls the experimental equipment of the School of Chemical Engineering, which is worth hundreds of millions. He is like a ruffian on the street, becoming the dean of the Imperial College. We followed the normal procedure to borrow a piece of idle equipment, but Sister Zhongyu had to face such difficulties. In the past, he ruined the atmosphere of our Jinhuan Academy. Now, he wants to ruin the academic atmosphere of another academy. Before I came to the laboratory, I might not have felt anything. But now, I really feel that a serious scholar should not be under the jurisdiction of a scumbag like him. On a smaller scale back then, Dean Tong vowed in front of us that he would expel Wang Run. In the end, not only did he not get the hell out, but he even got promoted? Wang Run was fired, but he was promoted. If such a person continued to mingle in the school, Sister Zhong Yu righteously rejected him today. But what about in the future? Or was there someone else who was in a hurry to tackle a key project at a critical moment? Give him another card? Think about it. Do you really want people to lie on his bed for the sake of learning? That is the biggest joke in the world. On a smaller scale, Zhong Yu is my friend. How dare he treat my friend like this? I can't stand it. Today, I will settle old and new grudges with him. In this lousy school, if he exists, I will not exist. If I exist, I will not exist. No matter which school he is in, it is the same. Don't stop me. If I stop you now, I will find him alone tonight. The consequences will be worse. If I don't let him know, he will be in charge of the equipment. Tomorrow, he will be in charge of the administration of the school. While Chen Guang was speaking, Zhuo Jingxi had been hugging him from beginning to end. However, she gradually let go, knowing that she could no longer stop Chen Guang. At this moment, Luo Jin suddenly said, "Oh right, where's Hua Ling? Wasn't she here?" Zhuo Jingxi asked. It seems that after I said that Wang Run wanted to be my sugar daddy, she went back to the lab and came down from the other side of the building with something. Zhong Yu vaguely remembered. This is bad. Zhuo Jingxi stomped her feet. She was trying her best to control Chen Guang, but she forgot about Hua Ling, the bad-tempered girl. She was also one of the main forces pulling Chen Guang back. But in the end, she charged over herself. Let's go check it out. Chen Guang didn't have much contact with Hua Ling, but it was undeniable that the straightforward Hua Ling helped him a lot these days. A group of people ran all the way to the laboratory building of the School of Chemical Engineering. From afar, they could see a large group of people surrounding the school building. Everyone thought that Hua Ling was in trouble, so they quickly rushed forward. Before they could take 2 steps, a loud shout came from the crowd in front of them. It was Hua Ling. She was full of energy. Obviously, she didn't suffer much. Fortunately, nothing happened to him. School of Chemical Engineering. Jinhuan School. The biggest stinky shit. Stinky shit. Wang Ren jumped ship. Wang Ren, you son of a bitch. Eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. He ran away with the mess he left behind. You want to molest a girl just to borrow equipment, and now you come to the School of Chemical Engineering. Wang Ren, you son of a bitch. Hua Ling's loud voice resounded through the sky. Obviously, she had been shouting for a while. Otherwise, she wouldn't be surrounded by so many people. Chen Guang was shocked. He really didn't know that senior sister Hua had this kind of talent. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough time to completely adapt the 350 million yuan from Jiangnan Tannery. What a pity. Who is this girl? Why is she so arrogant? Listening to her accent, she seems to be from the northeast. Oh my god, she scolded Wang Run like that. If something bad happens, I have to go and help her. Don't get involved in this. What if you offend Wang Run? Aren't you afraid of being expelled? What's there to be afraid of? Who doesn't know what that bastard is? You don't know, a few days ago, I borrowed a pH meter, and he asked me for 2,000 yuan. I don't want to study this stupid master's degree anymore. Obviously, even if Wang Ren only came to the School of Chemical Engineering for 2 months, he had already made a big name for himself. As the saying goes, gold will shine wherever it goes. Excuse me, please excuse me. There were a lot of people in front of him, so Chen Guang had to keep pushing his way forward. At this time, there was a loud noise coming from the front. Which school are you from? Stop right there. Give me the loudspeaker. Wang Ren finally went downstairs. Let go. Hua Ling's shout came from the front. It seemed like Wang Ren was trying to grab the loudspeaker. The students who were still blocking in front of Chen Guang suddenly became noisy. They are fighting. They are fighting. Chapter 374. Chen Guang's heart tightened. Although Hualing was bigger than the average girl, Wang Ren was also fat and strong. If they really fought, Hualing would definitely be at a disadvantage. He hurriedly squeezed to the front, not caring if the people behind him could keep up. Another crisp sound came from the front. Maybe the loudspeaker was smashed on the ground. "You bitch! How dare you scratch my face? I'm trying to catch you shameless. Not only did you kill Xiaolu, you also want to harm others. I don't even know who this Xiaolu is. Get out of here. Get out." Wang Ren's voice was getting more and more out of control. Ah, this was Hualing's scream. They really started fighting. When Chen Guang heard the two words Xiaolu, he suddenly understood. Although this northeastern senior Hualing had a forthright personality, she shouldn't have lost control like this. But if she knew Ding Lu, then it wouldn't be strange. So after hearing that Wang Ren tried to keep Zhong Yu as a mistress, maybe the string in her brain snapped, and she did such an impulsive thing. The Xiaolu she was talking about was Ding Lu. She was the girl who chose to commit suicide after leaving the school for various reasons. When Chen Guang was about to rush out of the crowd, Hualing was already fighting with Wang Ren. Many students and teachers were trying to pull the two to the side, but Wang Ren was grabbing Hualing's hair. Hualing was also fiercely pulling Wang Ren's collar. Her other hand was desperately pulling his face like crazy. Finally, the two were pulled apart. "Wang Ren, you will die a horrible death. You will go to hell sooner or later," Hualing actually cried. She did not expect that she would lose control of her emotions after coming here. Originally, she only planned to scold Wang Ren, but after seeing him in person, the things in her mind suddenly floated to the surface, and she lost control. Wang Ren wiped the blood off his face and fiercely grinned. "Go to hell? Before I go to hell, you have to get out of this school. Beating and insulting the school leaders in public, you will be expelled." "So be it. I don't want to go to this broken school anymore," Hualing shouted. Wang Ren coldly stared at her again. "You think it's as simple as not studying? What you did today, I will record it in your file. No matter where you go to work in the future, this file will follow you for life." With Wang Ren's current position, of course, he did not have the authority to do so. However, if he could get his uncle, the vice principal, to speak to the administrative leaders of the school, he could really do it. Hualing's face turned pale as she realized the severity of the situation. Seeing that Hualing was scared, Wang Ren, who felt like he had lost all face, finally regained it. He became proud. "That's why you people from Construction Ring are like this. You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. What right do you have to find trouble with me? Regret it for the rest of your life. I, Wang Ren, am not afraid of anyone in this school." The more he talked, the more proud he became. Although today's situation was embarrassing, it didn't matter. He could take this opportunity to establish his prestige in the chemical engineering department, and also let others know that he was a tough guy, and in the future, they would come to pay their respects to him. Damn it! Too arrogant. I'll beat him to death. Some of the angered students couldn't help but want to rush forward. But the calmer students tried to stop them. Everyone knew that they couldn't afford to offend this person. The movement of the students in front finally gave Chen Guang enough space. He suddenly moved to the front, stood in front of Wang Ren, and coldly looked at him. "Really? You've never been afraid of anyone?" Wang Ren's whole body quivered. Looking at Chen Guang standing in front of him, he blinked his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. Why is this devil incarnate here? He had seen the surveillance video of Chen Guang beating up Pan Jiang in the Qingye Xian. If he was a treacherous person, then this Chen Guang was a violent person, and a violent person with Wu Shan as his backing. That day in the Jianhuan school, after he found out Wu Shan's identity, he was also scared. Fortunately, his uncle was not a small character, so he was able to hold on. Being stared at by Chen Guang like he wanted to eat someone, Wang Ren subconsciously took a step back. Although he absolutely didn't want to admit that he was afraid of Chen Guang, his subconscious reaction sold out his thoughts. Chen Guang bent down and looked at Hualing, whose hair was messy and face was covered with dirt. "Senior Hualing, you can go outside and rest. There's nothing for you to do here." What do you mean there's nothing for you to do here? After Chen Guang said this, both Wang Ren and Hua Ling were at a loss. After so many years of administrative work, Wang Ren had some ability to read people's expressions. He suddenly realized that this kid was going to be ruthless. So he asked Hua Ling to go away first, so that this girl could get away. Thinking of this, he almost wanted to run, but when he turned around, he found that his back was crowded with people, and there was no way to escape. Even though the people surrounding him were not really trying to block him, they had unconsciously cut off his escape route. At this time, Zhuo Jingxi and the others finally squeezed in. Chen Guang pushed Hua Ling into Zhuo Jingxi's arms. Teacher Zhuo, you guys leave first. Zhuo Jingxi, Hua Ling, Zhongyu, and the others shook their heads violently. I'm telling you to leave this place. Listen to me. Chen Guang shouted. Let's go back, we can talk about this later, okay? Zhuo Jingxi still wanted to persuade him. Chen Guang grinned. Are you trying to kill Wang Ren? Ah! Zhongyu, who was next to him, was stunned. However, Zhuo Jingxi understood what he meant. He was clearly saying that if she didn't vent her anger today, someone would really die later. Seeing that she understood and began to retreat with the others, Chen Guang no longer cared about them, but turned around and walked forward. Wang Ren was trying his best to push through the crowd on both sides, trying to run forward. In fact, when Chen Guang first came here today, he did not really intend to make a move. He knew that Wang Ren was afraid of him. As long as he was here, he could borrow the lab equipment with just a word. Based on that bastard's bullying personality, he would only worship him like a Buddha statue. However, when he saw this person, saw the unkempt Hua Ling, saw the mention of Ding Lu's death, and saw the arrogant look on his face, Chen Guang suddenly changed his mind. He knew what it meant to throw a punch, but he could not bear it. Wang Ren, a brainless, uncultured, filthy, domineering and dirty person, was able to act like a tyrant in the Wujing University for so many years. Even though all the students and even many teachers knew from the bottom of their hearts that he was a rotten person, he still stood tall and did not fall. Even though he was expelled from the Building Loop Academy because of Chu Li's incident, he still managed to get a job in the School of Chemical Engineering. This showed that the person behind him was actually not afraid of Wu Shan. He just wanted to give everyone face and let the matter rest. For so many years, too many people wanted him to leave this school, but no one was able to put it into practice. It was not hard to imagine how strong his backer was. Gokyo University was second to none in the southwest of China. The person who could let Wang Ren cover the sky with one hand in this school would not have a low status. This school's principal had the administrative rank of a deputy minister, and even the deputy was at the level of a prefectural office, the same level as Wu Shan. The school was also a place to spread branches and leaves. The person hiding behind Wang Ren's back must have a great influence in politics, business, and education. In fact, after Wang Ren was expelled, Chen Guang really wanted to get rid of this scum. But at that time, he and Wu Tong both knew that this kind of person would not be satisfied just by scolding him or beating him up. He must be punished by the law. So Chen Guang and Wu Tong together decided to slowly collect evidence. It was just that both of them had their own things to do. So it dragged on until now, until today, when he once again appeared in front of Chen Guang. Wu Tong and Chen Guang had said many times that fists and kicks were not the real way to solve problems. But at this moment, Chen Guang couldn't control the evil in his heart when he looked at Su Tao's silhouette. He wanted to smash his fist against Su Tao's head, causing his brains to splatter. So he swung his fist in public, under the shocked gazes of hundreds of onlookers. Without hesitation, he threw a punch. This simple punch carried the determination in Chen Guang's heart. Really, if worst came to worst, he would be expelled. If he did not teach this bastard a lesson, Chen Guang really felt that there was no point in continuing to read this book. Now that the law could not punish him, then he would let his fist punish him first. Wang Ren, who was running forward, suddenly felt a hard hit on the back of his head, and his mind went black. That fellow Chen Guang really made a move. Wang Ren screamed in his heart, and tried to stagger forward again, but the back of his shirt was suddenly grabbed. Why are you running? Chen Guang said coldly behind him. If you have the guts to do it, then you have the guts to stand here and take it. Chapter 375. Chen Guang, don't mess around. Didn't you want to borrow the equipment? I'll arrange it for you. Wang Ren shouted with a pale face. However, Chen Guang paid no attention to Su Tao and pulled Su Tao's face over. That matter is not important to me now. Chen Guang said expressionlessly and punched Wang Ren's face again. Wang Ren fell on his back. Blood or teeth stained with blood flew out of his mouth as he swung his head back. Chen Guang was really holding back. He didn't know what would happen if he fully exerted the power of the Kirin arm. There were too many people here, and it started with Hualing. If he killed him here, it would be very troublesome, unimaginably troublesome, so he couldn't do that for now. But he could collect some interest. Then Chen Guang pounced on him again and punched the other side of Wang Ren's face. His fist scraped his nose, and there was a faint sound of bones breaking. The bridge of his nose was broken. After 3 punches, Wang Ren was completely unconscious on the ground. Blood came out of his mouth and nose. The place where Chen Guang's fist hit cracked open, revealing the flesh inside. At first, when Hualing and Wang Ren were fighting, there were students and teachers who came to separate them. But at this moment, there were hundreds of people surrounding them. They didn't even have time to react, or it could be said that they were scared by Chen Guang's action. Although Chen Guang's actions were something that many students had fantasized about, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts when they saw this scum being beaten up before them one day. Gradually, some of the students who were watching the fun began to retreat. It was a big deal, and it was better to protect themselves. Even some of the teachers who rushed over from the laboratory, after hearing the news, quietly retreated to the back. If Wang Ren made a fuss to his uncle, and the overprotective vice principal found out that he had watched his scumbag nephew get beaten up into a state that was neither human nor ghost, who knew if he would secretly make things difficult for him. Not long after, the people on this side all ran away, but no one cared about Wang Ren, who was lying on the ground. It was obvious how unpopular he was. One of the more courageous young teachers walked at the back. When he saw that there was no one else, he said, "Student Chen Guang, you better not make a move. Otherwise, I advise you to turn yourself in. Don't you know who Wang Ren's uncle is? He's the vice principal of our school." After saying that, the man turned around and ran without looking back, afraid that he would get into trouble. Chen Guang curled his lips indifferently. Since he had already been beaten to this state, it didn't matter anymore. He kicked Wang Ren's stomach again. This guy, who had completely stopped moving, started to tremble on the spot, as if he was a toad that had its skin peeled off. Those who were watching from afar felt that Wang Ren deserved what he got, but they still felt a little jealous. Tragic, truly tragic. Just a moment ago, he was still unbridled and arrogant, and the next second, he was beaten like a dead dog. Sigh, it's just that this person is too weak. There's no sense of accomplishment in beating him up, and he's already lying on the ground after 2 or 3 hits. You should at least put up some resistance. Just as everyone left, Zhuo Jingxi, who had chased Hualing, Zhongyu, and the others back to the laboratory, came back alone. When she saw Wang Ren lying on the ground, it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly went up to check on him, and found that he was still breathing. Only then did she feel slightly relieved. Hurry up and leave. Just say that I beat him up. I'm a school teacher. At most, I'll just pay for it. Zhuo Jingxi pushed Chen Guang fiercely, wanting him to leave. Chen Guang, who had been pretending to be cold and unfeeling, almost laughed at her. Teacher Zhuo, you're so funny. Look at the situation now. Who's playing with you? Don't think that you can settle such a big matter with money. It's very troublesome. It's not something that can be solved with money. Zhuo Jingxi saw that he was unwilling to leave and panicked. Then if I leave, you'll be the scapegoat. You're just a PhD student. What kind of position is a counselor? Can you handle it? I just heard people say that Uncle Wang seems to be some kind of vice principal, right? How can you handle it? Besides, so many people saw me hit him. Don't look at how the people nearby have all run away. Who knows how many people are watching from the windows over there, and behind the door over there? How can they take the blame for a delicate girl like you? Chen Guang, on the other hand, had thought things through clearly. Zhuo Jingxi's face turned pale. She did not know what to do. Listen to me. This matter has nothing to do with you. It's just a personal grudge between him and I. I don't like him, so I can beat him up if I want. It's that simple. It'll be troublesome if you guys get involved. Believe me, Wang Ren wouldn't dare to do anything to me. It has nothing to do with how much money I have. There's another reason. What you should do now is to do as I said just now and distance yourself from this matter. Besides, I'll just fire you and settle the matter with some compensation. It's nothing. Zhuo Jingxi shook her head violently. It'd be fine if it's just firing you. No, firing you definitely won't do. Don't tell me you'll have to retake the university entrance exam. Your life will be ruined just like that. You might end up in jail. I can't go to jail. I really can't. If you don't leave, I'll have no choice but to kick you out. You don't want those people hiding around to see me slap your butt, do you? Seeing that he really could not get rid of her, Chen Guang decisively came up with this plan. Perhaps he was just trying to take advantage of her? Don't. Please don't. Zhuo Jingxi panicked. At this moment, police sirens suddenly sounded in the campus from afar. Zhuo Jingxi said anxiously, "Someone called the police?" Chen Guang nodded. "I did." "Huh. So what? There are so many people watching. I can't just run away, can I?" Not long after, a brand new Jetta police car stopped beside them. Wu Tong got out of the car. As soon as she got out of the car, she saw Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi standing at the side. Wang Run was lying on the ground. Wang Long, the old comrade who used to lead the new, followed behind her bitterly. Comrade Wu Tong was now the deputy chief of the Wenxing branch. Her promotion was really fast. Chen Guang's method of calling the police was also different. He did not call Jiao Jiao, but Wu Tong's cell phone. She came very quickly. "You rascal. I thought you could hide from me forever. I've caught you this time, haven't I?" Wu Tong said cheerfully as she got out of the car. Wang Long, who was beside her, said, "Chief Wu, was there a victim?" Wu Tong rolled her eyes. "Oh, I didn't see him." "Ah." Wang Long was dumbfounded. "You didn't see such a big person?" Of course, Wu Tong was lying. "Don't be nervous. I feel that the atmosphere here is too heavy. I'm just trying to liven it up a little." "What kind of victim is he?" "He was just beaten up. It's not a big deal. His name is Wang Run. He's the person I asked you to collect information on a few days ago. You know what I mean?" Wang Long suddenly understood. Oh. Actually, Wu Tong had always kept this matter in mind. About a week ago, she had set Wang Run as the first of her 3 moves as a new official. However, this matter should not have been the responsibility of the police station. It should have been the responsibility of the Anti-Corruption Discipline Inspection Department. However, since others did not care, and a girl's life was involved, Wu Tong used her authority as the deputy chief, and her identity as Wu Shan's daughter to take matters into her own hands. No one could say anything about it. Of course, all of this had been carried out in secret, which meant that she had done it in private. Although Wu Tong was impulsive, she was not stupid. She knew that it was best not to make a big deal out of this, unless the day she revealed her trump card. When the time came and the conditions were right, she would use it all at once. What was done could not be undone. Naturally, Wang Run would not be able to clean up the mess. Can you not drag out the ending so much? Wu Tong was unhappy. It makes it seem like I'm trying to play favoritism. How can that be? Chief Wu's eyes are like a torch. You hate evil as if it's your enemy. You plan for a rainy day. You are the model of the current police force, Comrade Wang Long said resolutely. Chapter 376. The cruel reality had forced Wang Long, an excellent police officer who was good at his job, to become a flatterer. She was a rookie, then a captain, and now a deputy chief. Comrade Wang Long's fate was tragic enough. How could the gap between people be so big? Of course, it was no wonder that Wu Shan tried his best to promote Wu Tong. The credit of killing 7 international criminals, including Shi Jiu, was not something an ordinary police officer could achieve even in a decade. In addition, Wu Shan handled the situation well. He made it sound like Wu Tong was tricked by the police car and went into the factory. The young police officer risked his life to defend the country's sovereignty. He pretended to be weak, sneaked in alone, and killed all the criminals. In the internal documents, Wu Tong was described as a lone hero. With credit and background, it would be intolerable if Wu Tong did not get promoted. Wang Long was also joking. Putting today aside, Wu Tong's work was indeed upright and plain-spoken. She could endure hardship, and was brave enough to charge and break through enemy lines. She finally came close. Chen Guang chuckled. "Sis, I didn't hide from you. Aren't you busy, and so am I? Since I'm free today, I asked you to arrest me. Am I not giving you credit?" Wu Tong spat at him. "Save it. Do you think I don't know that you asked me to clean up your mess? You heartless little brother. Call me when you need me, and treat me like air when you don't need me." Wang Long, who was next to Wu Tong, had goosebumps all over his body. Scary, really scary. Director Wu, who was now called the Iron Judge Wu in the police station, actually spoke in such a tone in front of his brother-in-law. "I won't be silenced when I return to the station, right? Then Teacher Zhua, shall I take Chen Guang away?" Wu Tong finally noticed Zhuo Jingxi, who was standing next to her in a daze. Zhuo Jingxi had seen Wu Tong last time, and knew that she was the police officer in charge of Chen Guang and Pan Zhang's case. She guessed that Wu Tong had a good relationship with Chen Guang, but now it seemed that it was very unusual. Zhuo Jingxi nodded blankly. "Oh, okay. Wang Long, you take care of the aftermath. Send this dead man to the hospital. I'll take the suspect away first," Wu Tong said as she pulled Chen Guang towards the police car happily. She had only taken 2 steps when she suddenly remembered something. "Oh right. You weren't crippled, right?" Chen Guang nodded. "I'm not crippled. I know what to do." "That's good. It's not a big deal. I can handle it." She watched as Chen Guang and Wu Tong got into the police car side by side. It didn't look like they were arresting criminals at all. It was more like 2 acquaintances who had met by chance on the street and were chatting happily. They were going to talk about life somewhere. Wang Long was also in tears. "Are you going to show favoritism in front of me?" They didn't even put on a fake handcuff? They didn't even make an official article? Seeing that the police car had gone far away, Zhuo Jingxi couldn't help but ask, "Officer Wang, I'm Chen Guang's counselor Zhuo Jingxi. Who is Chen Guang and Officer Wu?" "Sister." Wang Long subconsciously wanted to say brother-in-law, but he immediately felt that something was wrong. First of all, he was older than Wu Tong. Brother-in-law was too embarrassing. He should say brother-in-law. Secondly, this was also a joke in the police station. Wu Tong would never admit it. Of course, she had never denied it, but she couldn't say it in front of outsiders. So he waved his hand. "Next, I'm such a genius. You should leave this place quickly. This matter is very complicated, more complicated than you think. I can't say anything yet, but Teacher Zhua, you must not get involved," Wang Long said as he called 120. Chen Guang had already slipped away, so there was no point in Zhuo Jingxi staying there. Since the police were in charge of the scene, she also knew that she didn't have to get involved. She could only leave worriedly. In the car, Wu Tong said as she drove, "I found some things about Wang Run, but it's only at the level of corruption. Frankly speaking, if Wang Run was just an ordinary person, this would be enough to convict him, but now it's still not enough. I have to raise the case to the level of a criminal case before I can arrest him. You're a little impulsive today." Chen Guang sat in the front passenger seat. He felt that Wu Tong's words were vaguely familiar. It seemed that after he beat up Ma Sunlin, the president, not long ago, Lu Fei also said the same thing. "I can't help it. I just happened to be at the right time, and I couldn't control my hand. Wang Ren has an amazing uncle. I know that. He's the vice principal. His official position isn't as high as your father's, right?" Wu Tong pinched his leg. "Look at what you're saying. It's as if you can convict someone just because he's a higher official or a lower official. Well, the administrative ranks are really the same. The vice principal of Gokyo University is indeed at the level of a prefectural hall. A school's vice principal has that much power? He can cover the sky with one hand? Chen Guang asked curiously. I can't say that he can cover the sky with one hand, but in this school's territory, that executive vice principal really has the final say. Don't look down on people. Although that old man doesn't seem to have any real power outside, he has a wide range of friends. He has students all over the world. There are also many friends in Yanjing who can help him speak up. There are also many department leaders in Dechuan province who have real power under his tutelage. Or when they were studying under him, they owed him a favor. Even my father has to give him some face. Wu Tong pointed out the crux of the matter. Chen Guang curled his lips in disdain. What good can this kind of person teach? He's just a fly trying to gain personal gains. But in this world, isn't it easy for a fly trying to gain personal gains? Wu Tong seemed to be mocking herself, but also seemed to be talking about Wang Ren, or perhaps Wang Ren's uncle. Chen Guang sat at the Wenxing police station for as long as a bag of melon seeds, because he really ate a bag of melon seeds while sitting in Wu Tong's office. There was no one else who could treat a criminal as well as him so well. That was why relationships were so important in this world. If it was someone else who injured someone and was brought to the police station, they would not be able to escape the most basic public security punishment. Of course, Wu Tong was not like this usually. Her title as the Iron Judge was not for nothing. But if she did not help Chen Guang, who else could she help? Most of the time, she was just unfair. What's the big deal if I do something selfish once in a while? Wu Tong knew what kind of person Wang Ren was, and there was no obstacle in her heart. Before they left, Wu Tong also told Chen Guang not to pay too much attention to it. Although Wang Ren's uncle was formidable, Wu Shan wasn't a pushover, either. The higher they were, the more they wouldn't want to cause a conflict. Perhaps there would be a process of wrangling between Wu Shan and Wang Ren's uncle. For example, your people beat up my nephew, and you want to let it go? Then Wu Shan would make a fuss, saying that it was because your nephew wanted to keep someone else's girlfriend. Anyway, it was all made up. Believe it or not, that was my attitude. But in the end, the matter could not be blown up. Even if the vice principal's network expanded, he would not be able to reach that position for the rest of his life. Wu Shan was different. Everyone knew that he would come to the capital sooner or later. Since Wu Shan went to greet him, Wang Ren's plan was wasted. He deserved it for not being able to control his crotch and getting hot-headed whenever he saw Zhongyu. But Chen Guang and Wu Tong felt that it was not enough. This scumbag should not end up like this. According to Wu Tong, this person should go to jail to answer to the soul of the girl named Ding Lu. According to Chen Guang, this person should die. What Chen Guang said made Wu Tong's hair stand on end. My bottom line is to let him go to jail for 10 years. If he is like what the rumors say, that he will be released for medical treatment after a few months, I will personally send him on his way. No one can stop me. Chapter 377. When she returned to school, she went straight to the laboratory, but it was empty. The experiment could not continue after such a big incident. Zhuo Jingxi let Zhong Yu and the other two go about their own business. But in fact, everyone knew that perhaps today, or perhaps tomorrow, Wang Ren's protective uncle would do something. There were many rumors about Wang Ren and his uncle Su Lijing in the school. Everyone was well aware of it, but no one said anything. Those who knew a little about the inside story could not understand why the famous economist, Mr. Su Lijing, would be so protective of his nephew. Those who knew more about the inside story could vaguely guess that Wang Ren and Su Lijing were uncle and nephew, but that was because of the strict birth control in the early years. From the beginning, Su Lijing had pulled Wang Ren under his sister's name. In fact, Wang Ren was his biological son. Su Lijing was also a person. Back in the 70s and 80s, when he was still young, he gave up many temptations abroad and returned to China. He had a considerable status in the domestic economics field, and had done some practical things in recent years. After getting involved in administrative management, he was considered to have taken one step at a time in the school. When he was just over 60, He sat firmly in the position of executive vice president of Gokyo University. He was also quite accomplished academically, and was indeed a person who contributed. At the same time, there were internal rumors that he was also a member of the central think tank, but this could not be confirmed. It was only a rumor. But no one was perfect. Perhaps the only blemish in Su Lijing's life was Wang Ren. When Wang Ren was young, he lived with his sister in a small place. Su Lijing's sister was not good at disciplining this fake son, so Wang Ren was rebellious and fought from a young age. He didn't even finish junior high school before he dropped out and mingled in society. He was even sent to prison when Su Lijing went abroad. Originally, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Later, because Su Lijing returned to China, he contributed a lot and personally acted as a guarantor. It took another 2 years for Wang Ren to be released. Perhaps Su Lijing felt that he owed his nephew too much, so after he was released, he especially spoiled him. 10 years ago, he found an excuse to drag his nephew, who didn't even have a junior high school diploma, into the school. It could be considered as arranging an iron rice bowl for him. As Su Lijing's position and status rose higher and higher, Wang Ren also followed suit. He started as a school police officer and climbed up step by step. Gradually, under Su Lijing's shadow, he became a tyrant in the school and a rat's poop in a pot of soup. He couldn't afford to offend anyone. It was only last semester when Wang Ren ran into Wu Shan's gun, because of the incident with Chen Guang, that he suffered a slight setback. In the end, he just moved to another place. Wu Shan was well aware of this, but this was the result of his negotiation with Su Lijing. Wang Ren was Su Lijing's biological son, and Chen Guang and Wu Shan were not related at all. There was no need for the two of them to fall out, because of the pestering of their juniors. Su Lijing being willing to give Wu Shan face was already very kind of him. It was only because of Wu Shan's amazing potential that Su Lijing was willing to give him face. However, potential did not represent strength. Su Lijing was giving in to Wu Shan, but Wu Shan could not make Su Lijing lower his head completely. Before you actually sat in those positions, no one knew what the next term would be like. Chen Guang found Zhuo Jingxi at her home. When she entered the door, she seemed to have just finished a phone call with someone. Her face was pale like a frightened bunny. "Teacher Zhuo, what's wrong?" Chen Guang strode in and felt that Zhuo Jingxi's expression was not right. Zhuo Jingxi shook her head. "No, nothing." Chen Guang sat on the sofa. "You really don't know how to lie at all." In the end, Zhuo Jingxi could not hide it anymore. The person who had just called was her tutor, Xu Lirong. According to the school's leaders, they originally wanted to directly revoke her doctorate qualifications. But because Xu Lirong insisted on protecting her, the matter was temporarily put on hold. Although Xu Lirong's administrative status was not high, her status in the academic world was not much lower than Su Lijing's. The two sides wrangled again, and finally reached a compromise. They removed Zhuo Jingxi's position as the person in charge of the photocatalyst laboratory team, and removed her qualifications as a tutor that she had fought so hard to obtain. She was temporarily retained as a student, but was not allowed to enter the laboratory. Instead, they arranged for a random company outside and sent her to be a technical consultant for at least a year. She could no longer continue the photocatalyst research that she had been doing for several years. The school did not even need to find any special reasons. They just said that the company had a contract with the school and needed a doctorate student to go there for technical guidance. The laboratory equipment was the school's. If they said they could not use it, then they would not let you use it. Letting you be the laboratory leader was to train you, and they did not take a penny from you. Even if they removed you today, you would not be able to go to anyone to complain. Of course, Chen Guang knew how big a blow this matter was to Zhuo Jingxi, but he did not expect the other party's counterattack to come so quickly and so fiercely. It's all my fault. I didn't think things through." Chen Guang had already tried his best to get Zhuo Jingxi to distance herself from this matter, but she was still implicated. Even if it was just a gust of wind at the edge of the storm, it would still be a devastating blow to her research career. For a person who was obsessed with research, this was indeed painful. Zhuo Jingxi wiped away her tears. It's not your fault. If I were in your shoes, I would have done the same. Chen Guang thought about it and really wanted to tell her. I'll build a laboratory for you. However, before he could say it, Liuli's voice rang out in his mind. Stop dreaming. I have my eyes on a big project, and am in discussion with someone. With the money you have left, it's just enough. Don't even think about using a single cent. He was really unlucky. Why did this lady make a move at this time? The two of them sat there for a while before Zhuo Jingxi seemed to suddenly react. I have to go see my teacher. Chen Guang asked, plead for her. Zhuo Jingxi said as she changed her shoes. No, my teacher must be very sad at this time. I'm the one who made things difficult for her. It was an hour later when she saw Xu Lirong. Old lady Xu was now 70 years old. Her hair was white, and she was wearing reading glasses as she sat in her study. She was also trembling with anger. On the way here, Zhuo Jingxi had told Chen Guang that the old lady was getting on in years, and was always worried that she wouldn't be able to do research for a few more years. Since more than 10 years ago, she had been wholeheartedly focused on photocatalysis, hoping to produce some results before she became too old to be sober. Her laboratory was currently the most advanced among the 5 photocatalysis groups. Now that it had suffered such a disaster, it would definitely be a huge blow to the old lady. She hoped that she could understand when she saw the old lady later. Zhuo Jingxi apologized to the old lady one after another. Old lady Xu wanted to scold her, but seeing her remorseful and regretful look, she couldn't bear to say anything. She just sighed. Sigh. That bastard Wang Ren came to our academy. This would have happened sooner or later. I've told Su Lijing many times, but it's useless. This can't be blamed on you. Who can be blamed for causing destruction in an academic place? It's all my fault. Teacher Xu, this is all my fault. Zhuo Jingxi was still apologizing. Xu Lirong stretched her neck and looked at Chen Guang, who was standing behind her. You're the Chen Guang who hit someone, right? Chen Guang knew that he couldn't avoid it. He thought that he would definitely be scolded, so he shrunk his neck and took a step forward, standing in front of the old lady. It's me. Looking at the old lady's silver hair, her face full of age spots, and her trembling hands and feet, Chen Guang couldn't help but feel a burst of heartache. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.